The story begins by introducing the Astri family, a house with a presence so imposing they say it could bring a flying bird straight out of the sky. They are so powerful that they possess the ability to influence even the emperor of the kingdom himself. As the most prestigious magic family, they will cast out their own flesh and blood if they lack talent, but a sinister rumor has begun to spread. In a room, a few maids and a man in a suit are talking, and one of them asks if the others have heard the rumor yet. She says that the first young master failed his awakening once again, and the other maid gasps, shocked because this is already his third mana shock. One of them wonders if the second young master will become the patriarch instead, but the other tells her to keep quiet for fear that someone might overhear them. One of them mentions that it makes total sense for the young master to lose his mind after 3 failures, and the other agrees that he has always been pretty eccentric. The man in the suit asks what the young man has been up to, and the maids react in surprise that he does not know about it yet. The maid explains that it all started a month ago when the young master suddenly woke up after being bedridden for a very long time. She says that as soon as he opened his eyes, the young master spent a long time mumbling all sorts of things that made absolutely no sense. Right after that, the young man just bolted barefooted right out of the massive mansion in the middle of a rainstorm. As if he had spotted something in the yard, he dropped to his knees and started digging into the dirt using nothing but his bare hands. After digging for so long that his fingers were practically raw, what he finally managed to pull out of the ground was, according to their story, what he was holding with an insane smile on his face was just a common weed. The man in the suit and a woman with gray hair looked completely shocked, utterly unable to understand why he would be grabbing weeds. The man tries to downplay it, saying it was probably just a rare herb, but the maids shout that that is not the real issue here. They reveal that since that unforgettable day, without missing a single time for a hole he has kept acting just like that. He spent all that time just pulling up weeds while a system screen alerts him that he has successfully obtained a blue basil. Multiple notifications keep popping up on the screen and the young man celebrates having yet another extremely productive day. He looks at his own calloused hands and realizes that things are about to change from that exact moment onward. He notices he is being watched again and thinks to himself that being the oldest grandson of the prestigious Astri magic family is quite exhausting. The young man introduces himself as Lion Astri, but reveals that in reality, he used to be a Korean guy named Baek Hyun. He mentions that he was a team leader at a mid-sized company in Korea, but quit his job on a total impulse because he could no longer stand his boss. With tons of free time after quitting, he decided to log into an old game he used to play a lot, but he ended up getting a massive surprise. He noticed with irritation that all of his old characters had been deleted and the game was prompting him to create a brand new one from scratch. Even though he was upset, he decided to start over and bought a character creation pack, hitting the absolute jackpot with some incredible skills. Determined not to struggle for survival anymore, not even in a game, he decided to build a pacifist character focused entirely on healing and support. The young man recalls that focusing on this relaxed playstyle was his very last memory before he stopped being Baek Hyun. Upon regaining consciousness, he had reincarnated as Lion Astri inside the game 50 years after the final chapter of the main story. He is thankful that he has the memories of the body's previous owner, and right after that, he manages to harvest a plant called water rosemary. A system window informs him that he has unlocked the novice herbalist achievement and also earned 1,000 shillings from the new harvest. He discovers that an exclusive shilling shop will unlock as soon as he accumulates a specific amount of this currency. Lion wonders if the shop will open once he hits 100,000 shillings. Thrilled that he might be able to escape this place way faster than he thought, he is relieved to see that achievement windows keep popping up and that the skills he purchased are working perfectly fine. But he quickly remembers a worrying detail and wonders if this body truly went through 3 failed awakenings. He knows that the Astri family only values merit, so the proto needs to scrape together some money before getting kicked out for having 0 mana. As he walks, he stays lost in thought, trying to find a way to save up enough money to make a safe getaway from there. Suddenly, he spots something interesting in the middle of the brush and stops immediately to take a closer look. He even considers whether he should try to offer some kind of bribe to the patriarch of the family himself to make things smoother. But he quickly catches an unusual blue glow coming from a bush and is amazed to see that glowing effect right before his eyes, hyped by the discovery. The young man is certain that this is a highly important harvest and runs quickly over to the spot. Without wasting a second, he thrusts his hands into the dirt and successfully pulls up that special glowing plant. The system reveals that he has just obtained a 3-star red sun fern, which is used to brew excellent potions. Lion celebrates big time for hitting yet another awesome achievement, but he is interrupted by a voice calling him young master. He keeps riding the high of getting a 3-star item, temporarily ignoring the person standing right behind him. He finally turns around with a start and finds himself facing the imposing presence of that elderly lady staring at him closely in the middle of the woods. He recognizes her as Madame Sylvia. While she remarks that he seems very focused on pulling up weeds lately, he replies that he has his own reasons and right after that asks if she can see what he is holding in his hand. She comments that it looks like a high-quality herb, but Lion insists that it is glowing and asks if she really cannot see the light. He gets confused because she cannot see the glow while Sylvia just watches him in silence, thinking that the rumors must be true. Placing her hand on the young man's head, Sylvia confirms that she really does not see any glow on the plant, leaving him surprised. With that, the young master confirms that he is the only one who can see the glowing aura around all the magical plants. Sylvia tells him that they need to head back immediately because the patriarch has been looking for the young man for some time now. The boy gets incredibly tense and frightened to hear that his terrifying grandfather is searching for him at this very moment. He remembers that his grandfather is a ruthless man who lives by the law of the jungle, discarding anyone from his own family who lacks talent in order to pull off a safe escape. The patriarch is target number one with whom the young man needs to build a good relationship as soon as possible. He did not expect Patrick Astry to come looking for him so soon and panics because he has not prepared any sort of bribe for the old man yet. Suddenly Lion gets a great idea while looking down at the sun fern he just gathered in the middle of the woods. The young master asks the lady to let his grandfather know that he will see him a bit, but first, he needs to ask for a favor. With a mysterious smile on his face, the young man steps closer to Sylvia to tell her exactly what he needs her to do. Meanwhile, back in the mansion's office, the patriarch is meeting with his assistant to receive the latest updates. He asks if the boy is still out of his mind and the assistant confirms that the young man has done nothing but pull up weeds ever since he woke up. The assistant adds that the youth still cannot sense mana but his health is in perfect shape and his memory is completely intact. Patrick makes a disgusted face at the response, showing his absolute disdain for his oldest grandson's useless situation. The patriarch coldly orders the assistant to leave the office so he can handle the situation by himself. Shortly after, the door opens and the old man calls for Sylvia, who emerges from the shadows wrapped in a dark mist. He asks if she has any idea what that boy is plotting right now, wanting to know if there is anything more to it than just the rumors. She simply answers that he is just pulling up weeds, something that all the servants in the mansion are already sick of hearing about. She mentions that his foraging has expanded into the forest, irritating the patriarch, who snaps that that is not what he wanted to know. Sylvia mentions that the boy sent word that he will come see him later, which leaves the old man completely outraged by such sheer audacity. He slams his fist on the desk in pure anger, unable to believe the nerve of his own talentless grandson making him wait. The old man roars furiously that if the boy does not show up right this second, he will burn down and level that entire forest. Sylvia accepts the command and begins to fade into the shadows, promising to deliver every single word of the old man's threat to the youth. Grumbling about his grandson's lack of manners, Patrick decides to place his hand on a glowing crystal orb. He mutters that the boy should have run over to thank him and stays completely baffled as to why he spent weeks messing around with weeds in another room. Lion is completely jaw-dropped when he sees the sheer amount of rare objects that have been brought to him. The young man looks in amazement at the table piled high with top-tier flasks and artifacts given to him to make his mixtures. He is blown away to notice that this equipment costs an absolute fortune, realizing that the rich air life is truly incredible. But he quickly sets the amazement aside and decides to focus on the plan to test out his veteran gamer intuition. Looking at the skill panel, he deduces that potion crafting must also have a repeatable quest to level up. The system explains that mastery levels start at apprentice and go all the way up to master, a rank that only 1% of players achieve in the game. Lion knows very well that the mastery level completely changes the ease of crafting and the final quality of every single potion made. Determined, the boy decides to start by brewing 100 potions all at once with the goal of drinking every last one right after. He extends his hand over the bubbling cauldron to begin the transmutation process for all of those rare ingredients. With a confident look, the young master activates his special extraction skill, sending a magical glow washing across the entire room. The glowing liquid flows flawlessly into the glass vial, indicating that the creation of the minor health potion was a total success. Holding the red bottle, the young man celebrates the success of the first potion, capable of healing the wounds of anyone who drinks it. Without wasting any time, the boy chugs the vial down and celebrates, saying that having great gear really makes all the difference. The system alerts him that his health has been restored and that his progress as a novice alchemist is finally leveling up. With a winning smile, he slams the empty vial on the table and says with a laugh that his terrifying grandfather is in for a huge surprise. Letting out a sinister laugh in the darkness of the room, he mentally tells the patriarch to just wait and see what is coming. Row after row of potion vials start piling up on the table while the system notifications show that he is about to hit the target. The next day, the sunlight floods the room, revealing a mountain of empty vials and the exhausted groan coming from the young man. Completely wiped out in his chair and holding the final potion, he mutters dramatically that he cannot take another sip of that liquid, with his health already topped off. Continuing to drink healing potions has turned into pure torture, but he knows he has to swallow the last gulp. He forces himself through a massive effort and swallows the very last drop, feeling terribly nauseous from the ridiculous amount he consumed. To his delight, the system alerts him that the novice alchemist achievement has been unlocked and a brand new secret recipe is now open. Satisfied with the results of his insane hustle, the young man turns toward the alchemy table to check out the details. With his heart pounding hard from pure excitement, he balls his fists determinedly and gets ready to kick off the next stage. Without wasting another moment, he drops the new glowing ingredients into the container to begin his most important creation. The young man recalls that he spent all his time while gathering herbs, thinking about what would make the best possible gift for his grandfather. Since the old man is already overflowing with mana and has medical mages on standby, giving him ordinary healing or mana potions would make zero sense. That was when he had the brilliant idea to craft a special potion to cure the elderly man's mental fatigue. The young master knows full well that his grandfather lives buried under obligations and hard work every single day without taking a break. Great mages use their own mana to re-energize their bodies, meaning physical exhaustion is never a real issue for them. However, the mental burnout caused by so much stress and work is an entirely different story that mana simply cannot fix. The mixture in the cauldron starts to glow with a very vivid blue hue and gives off a super refreshing scent, filling the young man with optimism. He remembers that back when he played the game, this specific type of potion was considered totally useless and used to sell for practically nothing. But now that he is actually living inside this reality, the value and the feeling of crafting this item are completely different. With determination, Lion extends his arm toward the lab equipment and conjures his extraction magic once again. The blue liquid floats spectacularly in midair, wrapping the young master's body in a glowing and incredibly beautiful energy. Inside that bluish magical potion, a few of his happy memories from the time he lived on Earth with his friends begin to reflect. The system alerts him that he has successfully created the mental fatigue potion, which works by bringing back the happiest memories of whoever drinks it. Lion celebrates big time when he sees that the item scored 2 stars. Knowing that this relic will be the perfect bribe to calm his grandfather down, just by catching a whiff of the potion's aroma, the young man's mind clears of all exhaustion without him even needing to take a single sip of the liquid. At that exact moment, a massive message pops up on the screen warning him that he has created something that should be impossible for his current level. Suddenly, the system announces that the allocation talent has been activated and the potential to form a mana circle has finally been unlocked. He goes into absolute shock upon reading that he now has the ability to control his own mana with far greater precision than anyone else. Dozens of sparks of bluish energy begin to emanate from his body and also around the flask he is holding in his hands. A massive, radiant aura completely envelopes the young man's body, causing the atmosphere of the entire room around him to shift. Looking down at the energy swirling around his own hand, the young man finally lets out a smile as he realizes that this is the famous mana. The young master breaks into a loud and super joyful laugh, celebrating that amazing achievement right in the middle of the lab. The young man's laughter can be heard from outside the door by a man who listens to him laughing happily about finally having mana. While Lion keeps laughing out loud, someone cracks the lab door open slightly and just watches the scene unfold in absolute silence. The person spying through the crack in the door wears a very serious, thoughtful expression before deciding to step away from there. The observer closes the door without making a sound and walks quietly down the massive hallway back to their duties in the mansion. Kicking back in an armchair, Lion celebrates that he now has both mana and money, thinking that at this rate his escape plan will be a total walk in the park. He closes his eyes with a satisfied smile on his face, soaking in that brief moment of peace and quiet after all his hard work. But suddenly the young man bolts out of his chair with a look of pure shock as he realizes he seems to be forgetting something incredibly important. He stands frozen for a few seconds staring into space until he lets out a shout as he remembers exactly what he managed to let slide. Meanwhile, over at the main office of the Astri mansion, the day breaks sunny and bright, but the mood remains incredibly tense. The terrifying patriarch Patrick Astri is absolutely furious, complaining out loud that Lion is already way past late for their meeting. Sylvia, who is standing right beside him, says she does not understand the reason why the youth is working so hard just to manage to craft a single potion. Patrick looks back on his glorious past as one of the core members of the hero party that took down fearsome dragons using fire. He prides himself on being the head of the Astri family, someone powerful enough to found an entire nation all by himself if he wanted to. He grumbles that he could provide a comfortable life for his grandson without any effort, and does not get what the fragile boy wants to prove by working so hard. She agrees that they have more than enough money and power and remarks quietly that it is only natural for the patriarch to be worried about his grandson. Hearing her comment, Patrick turns around in surprise and tries to deny it, but she keeps right on talking. She explains that the young master looked truly happy and fulfilled while he was focused on brewing that mysterious potion. The old man sighs and rubs his forehead impatiently, countering that happiness is good for nothing when the end is just waiting for him around the corner. She recalls with sorrow that this was the young man's third mana shock and that surviving even one is already an extremely difficult feat. Sylvia confesses that they can no longer wait for miracles and that she just wants the youth to spend the rest of his days in peace and good health. Their conversation is interrupted by a knock on the office door, followed by a voice asking for permission to enter the room. The door opens and the assistant announces Lion's arrival, who steps into the room rocking a clean look and a friendly smile on his face. The young man walks up to Patrick's desk, bows politely, and offers a sincere apology to his grandfather for being so late to their meeting. The old man, staring at him with pure severity, demands to know the reason why the young man only came to see him now. Since he recovered a while ago, Lion answers calmly that he needed this time to reflect on life after recently going through that terrible mana shock. The boy states that everyone in the family knows he does not possess the slightest talent for magic, which leaves Sylvia feeling worried and sad for him. Smiling to reassure her, Lion says that it is totally fine and that even he has already accepted this harsh reality about his body. He looks down at his hands and confesses that at first, he simply refused to accept the fact that his body could not handle mana. He explains that the moment he accepted the truth about his lack of talent, he felt like he would no longer have a place in this family. But the young man quickly claims that things have changed and offers his blue potion as the result of finally embracing who he is. He mentions that he studied intensely so he would not bring shame to the family name and adds that he prepared that bottle with one more purpose in mind. The youth reveals affectionately that he made the potion thinking that his grandfather might be feeling very tired and worn out lately. The patriarch, Patrick Astery, locks his eyes on the potion in silence with a serious gaze, wondering to himself what that flask is all about. Patrick notices that there is something very different about his grandson, realizing it is not just his posture, but that something deeply profound has changed within him. He gets thoughtful as he realizes his grandson spent all this time working hard in the woods just to make this potion for him. Deep down, the grumpy old man feels incredibly touched and moved by his oldest grandson's sweet gesture and dedication, but he quickly tries to regain his firm composure, remembering that he has been a transcendent being of the highest level in the kingdom for a long time. Patrick thinks to himself that his body is immune even to poisons and that the potion probably will not affect him, while his grandson repeats that he made it with him in mind. Even though he tries to hide his embarrassment, the patriarch is secretly laughing inside from pure happiness, hearing his grandson ask him to drink the potion, snapping back to his serious self. The old man asks coldly if he is done saying everything he wanted to say, and Lion politely replies that he is. Patrick says he understands and gives his grandson permission to dismiss himself, while the young man bows with a satisfied smile and says goodbye. The young man closes the office door carefully, leaving the patriarch and the head housekeeper Sylvia all alone in the massive room once again. Sylvia teases him, saying that he looks incredibly satisfied, but the old man tries to deny it, stammering that that is absolute nonsense on her part. The patriarch turns his full attention back to the mysterious blue flask and comments that there is something highly intriguing about that potion. He holds the glowing bottle with his gloved hand and murmurs that the energy of that blue liquid feels strangely familiar. Sylvia notes that the potion does not smell like mana and suggests using a method to analyze it, but the patriarch declines and says it is fine. The old man says he prefers to just sit back and fully enjoy all the sincerity and affection of his oldest grandson. Sylvia understands the decision, bows as a sign of respect, and exits the office, leaving Patrick alone with his gift. Left by himself, the patriarch reflects on how long it has been since he last received a genuinely heartfelt gift from his oldest grandson. He praises the excellent quality of the flask, thinking to himself that such a flawless piece of alchemy work could not have been done overnight. Even though he believes it will have zero effect on his powerful body, he decides to drink it so he does not waste the sweet gift he got from his grandson. Without hesitating any longer, the patriarch throws his head back and starts downing the glowing blue liquid straight from the small bottle. The moment he finishes swallowing the potion, a magical breeze filled with green leaves begins to blow gently all around his chair. He completely relaxes his body against the backrest and feels his exhausted mind become incredibly calm and at peace for the first time in years. Multiple happy, fragmented memories from his youth and his glorious past begin to surface softly in his thoughts. Shortly after closing his eyes, he ends up falling into a deep sleep, a quick nap that could barely even be called a full sleep. However, the dream the patriarch had during this brief nap was unbelievably sweet and peaceful, unlike anything he had ever experienced. A few moments pass and the patriarch slowly starts to open his eyes, feeling an incredibly light sensation throughout his entire body. He wakes up astonished that he managed to sleep at all and realizes that that beautiful dream about the past did not leave him dizzy or sad in the slightest. Looking at the empty flask, the patriarch notices with fascination that his mind is completely clear and that his chronic headache is entirely gone. He stares out the sunny window and feels that his daily mental burnout has been completely cured thanks to that simple potion from his grandson Patrick, lets out a soft sigh and remarks with a subtle smile on his face that that boy always does whatever he wants in life. He decides that he can no longer hold the boy back just because he is fragile and resolves that he will find a way to prevent any further mana shocks from hitting him. The old man thinks affectionately about living a long life alongside Lion. While out of nowhere, the young man suddenly feels his eyes fill with tears. Outside the mansion, a maid gasps upon hearing the terrible rumor that Lion Astri is supposedly about to pass away very soon. The other maid claims that he even gave a farewell gift to the patriarch, and they start deducing that that must be the reason why he was pulling up weeds. One of the male servants bursts out laughing and mocking him, saying that the young man was definitely just looking for his own burial plot. Suddenly, a loud, sharp noise startles the mocking servant, cutting his mean laugh right in the middle of the group's conversation. Desperate when they see who just interrupted them, the servants make up excuses about their chores and quickly run back to their hard work. Highly irritated, a maid named Hannah shares that yet another worker assigned to take care of young Master Lion has decided to hand in their resignation. Her co-worker is surprised, and Hannah complains that the other servants used to brag about how easy it was to care for the young man because he was so calm. She criticizes the total lack of loyalty from the workers who are running away without saying a word just because of those ridiculous, baseless rumors. She calls them ungrateful since the young man has always been good to everyone, until her co-worker stammers in absolute terror telling her to look behind her. Hannah turns around with a start upon hearing the cold voice of the head housekeeper Sylvia, who asks if she could perhaps learn more about this too. Sylvia wears an unsettlingly calm smile and asks Hannah to recount in full detail the whole story behind those rumors going around the mansion. Later on, in another part of the luxurious palace, someone politely apologizes for arriving late to the discussion. Patrick says it is completely fine and asks if there was some sort of urgency, and Sylvia just brushes it off calmly, saying it was nothing major. Meanwhile, the three gossiping servants are seen leaving the mansion with their bags packed after Sylvia handled the situation swiftly. Patrick falls silent and becomes deeply pensive for a few moments after listening to Sylvia's report about what took place. She proposes analyzing the young man's potion closely by using a mysterious skill called the Witch's Eye. A pink smoke and magic circles filled with runes begin to wrap around a glowing glass flask sitting on the wooden table. Sylvia states in total amazement that that potion is definitely not a simple item that the young master should have the capacity to craft, with her eyes wide open from sheer shock. She questions with extreme seriousness if that could perhaps be the legendary hero's potion. The lore recalls the world's legendary hero who suddenly vanished into thin air after wrapping up the war against the demons 50 years ago. He was an incredibly powerful figure, so much so that no dungeon or prison in this world would ever be capable of holding or containing him. His mystical strength was so overwhelming that even the deities themselves were hesitant to face him in a direct battle. She clasps her hands together, thinking that maybe he is the only one capable of finding a secret contract inside the mansion's labyrinth and freeing someone. Patrick says they cannot jump to conclusions, because if that were the true hero's potion, the effect on his body would have been significantly greater. He narrows his eyes in a highly analytical manner and adds a crucial detail about what he just witnessed during their meeting. Patrick states with absolute certainty that there is not the slightest chance that young Lion is the legendary hero from 50 years ago. He reveals that he plans to ask for an even better potion from his grandson, wanting his sister to feel the exact same peace and freedom that he just felt. He explains that she has been living in a state of lethargy for centuries and that if the potion worked on him, an 8th circle mage, it can definitely help his sister too. Hearing her ruler's kind and thoughtful plans, Sylvia lets a subtle smile slip and lets out a very soft chuckle. Patrick tries to hide his embarrassment by letting out a loud, forced laugh to completely pivot the topic away from his lethargic sister. Once and for all, she claims with a mysterious air that the most useless thing in the world is worrying about a witch who has 1,000 years of life and immense power. She tells him not to overburden his adorable grandson by worrying about her, but the patriarch tries to argue and counter her comment. Sylvia bows grateful for the affection, while the patriarch silently accepts the fact that his loyal ally is completely at peace with everything. He lets out a tired sigh and thinks of his beloved sister who remains asleep, crossing his fingers that this idea involving his grandson works out. In another area, Lion suddenly bumps into his grandfather and hears the old man point out that he has a face that looks pretty worried. The boy tries to cover it up and says there is nothing to worry about, but old Patrick immediately fires back, saying that is absolute nonsense. The young man starts cracking multiple funny jokes about his grandfather's old age, leaving the old man extremely irritated by the boy's teasing. Lion asks if his grandfather's worry is because of the potion he delivered, and the old man flinches, seeing that his grandson hit the nail right on the head, cutting straight to the chase. The patriarch gets down to business and asks in a serious tone if the youth is capable of crafting a potion of an even higher quality. Lion gets thoughtful and tense, remembering that at his current level, it is already extremely difficult to make a 2-star potion. He remembers that the rare herbs are completely gone and that his last success only happened out of pure luck, and because of the expensive gear he got as a gift, he decides he needs to capitalize on his grandfather's interest no matter what and says with confidence that the task is possible, but it will take some time. Out of curiosity, the young man decides to ask politely for what specific purpose that high-quality potion would be used. The patriarch answers completely calmly that he plans to give the potion as a gift to the housekeeper, leaving the young master utterly perplexed. Lion starts hilariously fantasizing that a forbidden romance is budding between his grandfather and the housekeeper. Even though that is not true at all, thinking about his grandfather's loneliness, Lion decisively requests a deadline of 2 weeks to manage to deliver a perfect, higher-tier potion. The old man jumps at the response, glaring at the young man, absolutely infuriated by the idea of having to wait that long for a single flask. Panicking at the elderly man's shout, the young man steps back in fear and promises to get the job done in half the time, asking his grandfather to just wait. He fills himself with determination, thinking that this is the flawless opportunity to get into his grandfather's good graces and secure some favors. The young man rushes out of the office in a massive hurry to get to work, leaving the patriarch Patrick standing there with his arm extended, completely bewildered, already walking through the forest under the bright sunlight. The boy starts to panic because he has absolutely no clue how to craft the agreed-upon item. He knows there is no time to level up his skills and that buying a pre-made potion from the game shop using his shillings would be the best option. Suddenly, Lion gets a good idea and decides to open his system panel to check out what interesting items are available in the shop. Upon accessing it, he discovers to his frustration that the shop preview only fully opens once he has 100,000 shillings, meaning he cannot buy anything for now. He gets outraged when he sees the absurd prices for the simple tools on display, comically questioning if the old key is made out of solid gold. The young man complains heavily about the system's greed for charging so much for old items and resolves to take a quick peek at the shop's other tabs. He gasps when he sees that they charge 10,000 shillings for a simple, magical seasoning, realizing with a sinking feeling that he will not be able to buy a single thing from there. With the shop ruled out for the time being, he realizes with regret that the only remaining path will be to go about it the standard, traditional way. The boy knows that foraging rare herbs with his own bare hands has its limits and concludes with sharp focus that he currently stands in need of better equipment. A thundering sound of hammer strikes begins to echo from the chimney of a forge nearby, pointing out the ideal manufacturing location. Inside the scorching workshop, a muscular blacksmith slams his hammer down hard on hot metal while a coworker calls out to him loudly. The blacksmith complains irritably about being interrupted right in the middle of his hard work, but the assistant panics and insists that he needs to move fast. The assistant reveals that an extremely wealthy and important client just arrived at the shop, piquing the bearded blacksmith's curiosity. The blacksmith walks over to the entrance and spots Lion Astri standing outside with his arms crossed, waiting patiently to be served. The blacksmith's jaw hits the floor when he comes face to face with a young nobleman who asks politely if he is the owner of this workshop. The nobleman asks with a friendly smile if he could try his hand at blacksmithing there, leaving the blacksmith completely speechless at the request. Smiling, the young man quickly holds out a pouch of coins and mentions that he obviously has no intention of doing this trial run for free. He opens the pouch, showing an immense amount of glowing gold coins to ensure that the compensation is more than generous. The story rewinds a moment in time, showing the young man evaluating some of the hoes and tools displayed in the shop's front window. He had noticed that the hoes there were of very low quality. Probably because the master blacksmiths only cared about forging weapons, Lion thought that even if he revealed he was from the Astri family, it would be impossible to get a flawless tool in just a single day. Because of that, his only way out was to ask the assistant, John, if he could use the forge space to try and craft the tool all by himself. John thought the blacksmithing request was bizarre, but Lion insisted with a winning smile, promising to pay very well for the favor. The master blacksmith lets out an ironic laugh as he takes a very close look at the massive amount of gold glowing inside the offered pouch. The blacksmith complains that he already has a headache and does not want to play games with nobles, but the helper panics and begs him to watch his mouth. The assistant hands most of the money back, saying that it is way too much and that the youth must have grown up completely isolated from the reality of the world. He warns the nobleman to watch out for scammers out there, and the young man just chuckles, revealing that he had given that much gold on purpose. Next, the master blacksmith cuts off their conversation, staring down the young man with a highly intrigued and suspicious expression. The blacksmith asks ironically if a nobleman with hands so soft and delicate truly wants to forge a hoe entirely on his own. The narration reveals that long-bearded muscular blacksmith belongs to the proud and legendary race of dwarves in this world. Dwarves are described as an extraordinary race, so resistant to heat that they will even if they put their hands directly into the fire itself. In addition to possessing absurd physical strength, they also take a backseat to absolutely no one when it comes to focus and meticulousness in their craft. Lion is surprised to see a dwarf there, until the blacksmith firmly crosses his arms and asks what the young nobleman's name is. The boy introduces himself, and the dwarf immediately asks if he is the famous weirdo from the Ostry family, leaving the helper panicking in the background. Without caring in the slightest, the dwarf orders John to set up a workspace for the weird nobleman to get to work, making the assistant feel like he is about to lose his mind completely. The blacksmith says he can use the fire from the forge cauldron and tells him to put the helper to hard work. Receiving a friendly thank you from the youth, Lion tries to ask for the master blacksmith's name, but is comically surprised to realize that the dwarf has already vanished from the spot. The assistant reveals that his brother's name is Mudu and introduces himself as John, asking the young man right after to follow him through the forge. John guides the young master into the depths of the blacksmith shop to show him every single detail of the area where he will be making his creations. The assistant tells him to look around completely at his own pace, and the young nobleman is left totally amazed by the quality of that workshop. John explains that all the tools and finished products made inside are later taken out to be displayed in the front windows. Facing the street, Lion notes that the gear is great work with immense care, but he senses that there is still something wrong there. Standing before the fiery cauldron, the young master gets highly intrigued as he questions the reason why the final quality of the tools is so low. Suddenly, Lion looks closely at the blazing flame of the smelting furnace as he notices something incredibly strange moving inside the fire. The system alerts him that a low-level fire spirit is looking at him, appearing very weak and visibly exhausted inside the flames. The boy turns to the assistant and asks if the workshop's forge fire is usually this weak right from the start. Scratching his head shyly, John answers that the flames are not exactly weak right now, but confesses that the situation has shifted a bit lately. John says that the fire's power has dropped significantly of late, and Mudu walks over intrigued, wanting to know how the boy managed to notice that completely calmly. Lion simply answers that the fire itself told him so, leaving the dwarven blacksmith in absolute total shock. Lion tries to keep talking about the hoe, but the dwarf extends his arm desperately, yelling at him to stop right there with that talk. Mudu orders John to clear out of the room immediately, stating that he needs to have a private serious chat with the young nobleman at this very moment alone outside the workshop under the falling leaves. The dwarven blacksmith glares at the young man with an expression of extreme seriousness. He asks firmly if the young man truly saw that entity in the fire, and Lion just lets out a subtle smile and confirms it with all the calm in the world. The blacksmith questions if the young man would be capable of fixing that situation, and Lion gets thoughtful, figuring that he could probably help out. Mudu promises that if he solves the fire problem, he will personally teach him blacksmithing himself. On top of offering another massive reward, he guarantees that all of Lion's orders will have top priority from that day forward, leaving the young master very surprised by the proposal. The young man knows that this workshop is so famous in the kingdom that it takes orders from various other fiefs and highborn warriors, hyped by the golden opportunity to have priority at such an important place. He accepts on the spot and tells the blacksmith to leave it to him. The blacksmith vents that he worked hard to expand the workshop, but now the fire spirit has ended up completely drained of energy from sheer exhaustion. He explains that without the spirit, the tools lose their quality, and that because he is a dwarf, he cannot understand what spirits are saying. The young man stares at the flames with a plan in mind. While the dwarf crosses his fingers that he can manage to do something useful despite looking so fragile, Lion calmly reveals that the tiny fire spirit is extremely thirsty, and Mudu flinches, questioning how a flame could possibly feel thirsty. The blacksmith suggests throwing water into the flames to quench its thirst, but the boy immediately fires back ironically, asking if the dwarf has lost his mind. Mudu shouts irritably, wanting to know what to do then, and Lion tells him to chill out, explaining that they need to give it something special that fire can actually drink. The dwarven blacksmith claims desperately that he will give him his ultimate masterpiece or any other reward if the nobleman can successfully resolve the situation. Lion asks if he is truly serious about that valuable promise, and the dwarf confirms it with absolute conviction. The two lock down the deal with a firm handshake, and the young man announces that he will kick off his rescue work that very night. Night falls over the workshop, bringing a calm and quiet mood while the moon shines in the starry sky of the fiefdom. Inside the empty blacksmith shop, the young nobleman comments with a smile that he ended up putting in overtime on this job without planning to. The system alerts him that the spirit's energy is running on empty from exhaustion, and Lion affectionately promises to brew the drink for it right away. The young man feels bad for the spirit, which is completely dehydrated from the extreme workload at the region's largest forge, finding the situation way too relatable. Knowing the creature's true need, he decides to use the water rosemary he gathered to whip up a special oil recipe. He explains joyfully that when the salty plant is processed that way, it turns into a perfect oil for the spirit to drink, the water. Rosemary oil begins to bubble and glow in a magical way, indicating that his recipe has been completed with absolute success. Lion pours the liquid into the flame, and the system alerts him that the spirit's thirst has been partially quenched due to the excellent compatibility. The little fire monster reacts with pure joy and begs for more, making the young man smile and promise to brew another batch real quick. Without wasting a second, the young nobleman starts squeezing more rare herbs into the cloth to extract every single last drop of the special healing oil. The fire spirit absorbs it all and becomes totally energized, having its mystical energy and its thirst completely restored inside the forge. With the creature feeling grateful, his spiritual attunement experience goes up significantly, and Lion says cheerfully that there is no need to thank him. The next morning, Mudu comes running into the workshop with his arms wide open and shouts excitedly that the eccentric young man actually pulled it off. The dwarven blacksmith stares at him with eyes wide from pure admiration, viewing the blonde-haired young man as someone truly incredible. Mudu notices Lion's worn-out appearance and asks if he is doing okay, and the young man answers completely calmly that there is nothing wrong at all. The young nobleman starts swaying from pure sleep deprivation and explains that it is just the normal exhaustion of spending the entire night working without any sleep. Suddenly, Lion passes out from pure exhaustion, crashing face-first onto the forge floor, throwing the dwarven blacksmith into absolute panic at the sight. Desperate over the fall, Mudu starts screaming at the top of his lungs, begging the boy not to pass away right there in such a tragic and sudden way. The time passes, and the smoke keeps drifting quietly up through the workshop's chimney under the clear, sunny sky of the fiefdom. Two children with bright green eyes lean against the dining table and ask cutely what that friendly young man's name is. Lion tries to answer, but the two adorable little creatures interrupt him to joyfully reveal their own cute nicknames. The young man watches the children smiling and playing together, finding that beautiful bond and strong friendship between the siblings truly heartwarming. He vaguely recalls that he also has a younger brother, but remembers with sadness that the kid was pretty grumpy and probably did not like him very much, sipping his soup. Lion concludes that everything will be fine as long as they do not cross paths, since he has zero interest in leading the family anyway. The blonde-haired young man is snapped out of his thoughts when he hears a female voice calling out with worry for the children inside. The children's mother tells the two to go play somewhere else, but one of them teases, saying that the young man's name must be Young Master. Looking at how cute the situation is, the young man introduces himself saying his name is Lion, and the child repeats his name all hyped up. The little boy says he thinks the title Young Master is way cooler and that he prefers to call him that, getting a sweet reply from the young man. The mother starts chasing after the two, complaining about them interrupting the nobleman's meal while the kids run away giggling loudly. Madame Leia apologizes for her little kids' behavior, but Lion praises their high energy and says the soup she made is absolutely delicious. She confesses shyly that she was in total shock when her blacksmith husband brought the young nobleman home completely passed out early this morning. Leia thanks him from the bottom of her heart for solving Mudu's problems, and Lion answers that having food and a place to rest is already more than enough payment. Suddenly the door flies open and the blacksmith Mudu walks into the room asking if the young man slept well, being received with a wild welcome by his kids. Mudu carries his kids affectionately in his arms while the children ask excitedly if the young master really managed to heal the spirit. Lion lets out a friendly laugh at the sight until the dwarf points out that since he has finished eating, it is already time for them to go work together. The master blacksmith states with conviction that he has left everything completely set up and organized at the workshop to kick off the nobleman's training. The blonde-haired young man is caught by surprise, not understanding what the dwarf meant by that and accompanies him back to the main forge. Upon arriving at the workshop, Lion's jaw drops when he faces a ridiculous amount of top-quality iron bars all laid out and prepared. The dwarven blacksmith says that is not the most important part and makes a gesture calling the young man over to the main workbench, with his eyes glowing from pure surprise. The young nobleman questions if all that material is truly high-grade iron. Mudu explains that he prepared everything beforehand to avoid the young man passing out from exhaustion again. If he were to start the job right from the smelting stage, Lion comments impressed that the lesson is way more serious than he expected. The dwarf counters by asking if he thought it would be a piece of cake. He answers that he wants to learn everything as soon as possible and the blacksmith praises the boy's enthusiasm and gets ready to do the demonstration. Standing before the furnace flames, the dwarf explains with absolute seriousness that the true foundation of blacksmithing lies in controlling the exact right temperature of the metal. The blacksmith teaches that a red glow does not mean it is ready and warns that if it goes past the temperature, the metal will end up completely melting away. The moment the iron bar hits the ideal glowing color inside the fire, the experienced dwarf yells out loud, alerting him that this is the exact moment Mudu lands incredibly precise hammer strikes and explains that the secret is pacing your strength to make the blade thin, while keeping the rest thick and durable. The dwarf teaches that after giving it the basic shape, you need to refine the details and sharpen the blade using a good whetstone. Finally, the experienced blacksmith demonstrates how to fit and secure the wooden handle into the hoe in a very firm and safe way. The dwarf holds up the glowing, finished hoe with pride, asking mockingly if the process was not incredibly easy. Mudu brags, saying that with his help everything becomes easy, and Lion asks with pure enthusiasm if he can use all the iron bars. The blacksmith gives the young man permission to use it all, and Lion quickly gathers the materials to kick off his own attempt. But the dwarf goes into total panic when he sees the young nobleman tossing every single of the iron bars directly into the furnace flames. The boy just looks back with a confident smile and says quietly that he is going to give it his absolute best on this forge attempt. Already working hard, the young man wipes the sweat from his forehead with exhaustion, admitting that blacksmithing work is way harder than he imagined. The system alerts him that his first hoe ended up completely damaged beyond repair, sitting at only 15% completion. Even though he is wiped out, the boy refuses to give up, knowing that with plenty of practice and repetition, he will manage to achieve success. Determined, he keeps hammering away at the metal repeatedly while the hoe's crafting progress begins to climb in the system. The tiny fire spirit helps out by maintaining the ideal temperature of the furnace so the young man can work the iron flawlessly. With the spirit collaborating perfectly with the correct heat, Lion notices that this is the exact rhythm he needs to follow. He concentrates all his strength and delivers a spectacular hammer blow down onto the glowing metal, creating a massive wave of brilliant sparks. The system congratulates Lion for unlocking the blacksmith talent, hitting apprentice level while the dwarf yells out in amazement at him in the background. The experienced blacksmith is left jaw-dropped when he sees the quality of the metal and tells the young man to use that piece to finish up the hoe already. The dwarf confesses, extremely impressed, that the energy of that piece of metal forged by the young man is completely different from anything else. The two work together with immense speed to apply the final touches and sharpen the remaining parts of the special equipment. Lion holds the piece firmly and fits the wooden handle precisely onto the top of the iron, wrapping up the assembly of his new work tool. He celebrates big time the success of the Astri hoe, which on top of boosting harvest speed has the fire spirit's power embedded right into it. Mudu praises the boy's incredible talent, stating that the tool turned out way better than what the majority of professional blacksmiths could ever make. The blacksmith says he should celebrate his talent more, and Lion smiles, thinking about taking a short break after finishing up the work. But instead of resting, the young nobleman points enthusiastically at the table and asks the dwarf to teach him how to craft a harvesting sickle right away. The master dwarf gets a completely hilarious blank reaction face in front of so much drive and energy from that blonde-haired youth. Mudu bursts out laughing from pure joy, praising the boy's absolutely insane determination to want to learn everything without ever stopping. He happily accepts to teach the boy everything he knows, who celebrates thinking that his grandfather will just have to wait a little bit longer for him. Night falls under the starry sky, while the young man stays firm on his plan to make his beloved grandfather's alleged romance dream come true. In the quiet darkness of the forest, only the distinct sound of metal hitting the damp earth can be heard from afar by the animals. Using his powerful new magical hoe, the young nobleman digs into the soft soil with total ease in the middle of the trees under the moonlight. The system alerts him that he has gathered a one-star finger ginseng, a special healing root that works to fully restore the body's breath and energy. Lion is highly impressed to notice how using a top-quality hoe made an absurd difference in the ease and speed of that harvest. The blonde-haired young man observes the plant in silence with an analytical gaze, concluding that the advantages do not just stop there. He realizes that now that he is equipped with the new hoe and sickle, there is a much larger variety of magical plants glowing across the forest. He lets out a confident smile as he realizes that if he raises the hoe's mastery level even further, the 3-star potion will be easily made with that goal locked in mind. The boy decides to keep digging into the dirt until he gets completely used to using the new tool. Notifications begin to pop up on the system screen showing that he has gathered some leaves and shoots from a plant called a banana sweet potato. Looking down at the crater in the dirt, the young man excitedly confirms that they are indeed sweet potatoes and imagines the sheer amount that must be buried there. But suddenly, a powerful flash of fire bursts abruptly from the tip of his magical hoe, startling the boy who falls backward onto the grass. A system window alerts him that the fire spirit's blessing has been activated, delivering a perfectly roasted and piping hot banana sweet potato. Lion checks out the blessing's details on the system panel and discovers fascinated that this amazing skill works for any edible item. The young man holds the golden, warm food in his hands, amazed to get it perfectly roasted with just a single strike. With his mouth watering from pure hunger upon catching the food's delicious scent, he resolves to take a quick break to eat before keeping on. Taking his first generous bite of the sweet potato, he lets out a gasp of surprise, lightly burning his mouth due to the food's intense heat. Even while blowing to cool his hot mouth, he smiles satisfied and cheerfully confesses that he prefers to eat the food super hot like this anyway. The blonde-haired young man eats in a super cute and joyful way, thinking to himself that sweet potatoes are only truly delicious when they are piping hot. He savors the sweet, soft food, finding the unique flavor extremely tasty and way better than the ordinary sweet potatoes back on Earth. He tastes an unbelievable creamy flavor, comparing that delicious sensation to eating a warm sweet potato paired with fresh milk. Sitting on the grass under the forest stars, the young man celebrates, happy as can be for scoring such a tasty dinner in such an unexpected way. His quiet dinner is interrupted when a few cute, chubby little birds start landing right near him on the forest floor. The young nobleman stares at a chubby, round little bird that is watching him intently and asks friendly if the little creature wants to eat too. Lion offers a piece of sweet potato to the little bird and tells it to eat up. The little creature eats it all and finds it delicious, making Lion laugh and tell it to eat as much as it wants. While the birds fly around happily, the young man remembers he had a friend just like that in the game and wonders if he is doing okay. Lion stretches satisfied and decides that after eating so much sweetness, it is time to start gathering the potion ingredients. With the little bird perched on his shoulder, he smiles excited and thinks that first, he should unearth a few more sweet potatoes. Meanwhile, back at the family's immense mansion, someone lets out a very loud sigh of worry. John is leaning against a tree and complains that it has already been 3 days since Lion left the house. Without him knowing what the youth went to do at the forge, he wonders if he should go after him right now and notices that the young master has still not returned. At that exact moment, the head housekeeper Sylvia suddenly appears right in front of the young man. John shares that he is dying of worry and that strange rumors are saying the young master is going to pass away soon or get kicked out. Out of nowhere, Lion emerges waving cheerfully and asks if everybody was hanging out here. Lion is then massively relieved. John rushes desperately over to him and asks startled what kind of state that is, but Lion just answers that he is doing fine. The young man gives an awkward smile and says, "It is no big deal." John is shocked to see the air looking so messy and suddenly points confusedly at the little bird on his shoulder. Lion looks at his shoulder in surprise and asks the little creature when it was exactly that it started following him around. At that moment, Sylvia steps closer slowly with a serious expression. She directly asks him to stop with all of that and Lion asks if she found out about everything from his grandfather. He puts his hand on his head and comments with a smile that his grandfather is truly a very dull person. Sylvia is left completely empty-handed trying to understand, but the young man asks her to wait just a bit longer and shares that he managed to bring all the ingredients. The head housekeeper goes into total shock upon hearing that he actually managed to bring everything he needed. Lion starts running toward the mansion and shouts for her to wait just a little longer because he is going to prepare everything as fast as humanly possible. He waves from a distance and alerts John to handle his duties calmly, leaving the assistant stammering without knowing what to say. John runs after him, yelling for him to at least apply some medicine to those scratches all over his body. Sylvia just watches the young man walk away in silence with a thoughtful gaze. She remembers that the majority of ordinary potions do not work on her since she is a witch, but that Lion has always been the most fragile of all the Asterisks. Because of that, she cares deeply about him and was moved to see him working hard at the forge and spending the night harvesting herbs. Even though she finds it amusing, she confesses that she felt a tiny little spark of hope rise inside her chest. Taking a step forward, she murmurs to herself that she truly wants to see the final result. The witch questions whether he is truly capable of creating a potion of that highly elevated tier. A few days later, inside the mansion's office, Patrick announces that she has finally arrived. The patriarch observes the look of surprise on Sylvia's face, who is holding the potion flask and looks heavily impacted. She shares emotionally that her mind, which had been dry and cloudy for decades, has become completely clear and praises the boy's incredible efforts. Sylvia mentions that this would be impossible without the patriarch's own help. But Patrick immediately guarantees that he did absolutely nothing. He explains that he is way too busy just reorganizing Lion's coming-of-age ceremony, which had previously been cancelled. Sylvia realizes that if Lion did that all by himself, the situation is even more serious and worrying than she imagined. She looks at the flask sitting on the desk and comments that it looks like the legendary potion of a true hero. The witch explains that a hero always emerges to save the world before it. However, their personal lives are never happy, as they face endless battles and deal with a constant emptiness at every difficult choice. And as soon as peace returns to the world, those heroes simply vanish suddenly, as if they were nothing more than disposable tools. Patrick clenches his hands tightly and agrees that they truly disappear, without leaving any trace whatsoever, as if they had evaporated. The patriarch laments that his comrades and descendants tried to look for him to this but they have never found even a single clue. He gets thoughtful and wonders what they should do. In case Lion is truly a hero destined for that kind of ending, Patrick confesses that he already lost a battle comrade in the past, and that he could not bear going through the exact same pain with his grandson. Hearing this, Sylvia gives a gentle smile and says that now is the perfect moment for them to hide the boy away very well. She announces decisively that she is going to retire from her duties, leaving the old patriarch completely in shock. Patrick stands up startled and asks if it makes any sense for her to give up her own freedom just to protect the young heir. He mentions that his greatest wish was to free her from that family contract, but Sylvia interrupts him by calling his name. She warns him firmly that worrying about a witch is the most useless, meaningless thing in the entire world. Sylvia begins to release her dark magic and states that she has already perfectly memorized every single clause of the contract. She recites that the witch cannot leave the Astaire family lands, but she has the right to live like an ordinary human inside them. Sylvia thinks to herself that because Lion allowed her to live in a much more human way, she will do absolutely everything for him. She assumes her true and beautiful witch form and decides that she will protect him closely with great pleasure. Meanwhile, over in the study, the family's second son, Lixil Astaire, finds out about the arrival of a new maid. Lixil finds it strange that she was hired specifically as the exclusive worker for his brother Lion. He is considered an unprecedented genius, the future heir of the family, and the youngest fourth circle mage in all of history. Lixil is the heir who looks the most like his grandfather Patrick, using his youth not as a flaw but as a powerful weapon. To a young man so intelligent, the sudden emergence of that new worker felt like something extremely fishy. He analyzes the paperwork and thinks it is impossible that Sylvia just retired out of and that another person took her spot so fast. The young man remembers a conversation he had with the former housekeeper the previous night right inside his own room. He commented that she looked cheerful and asked if she was really going to retire, and Sylvia confirmed that she just went to say goodbye to him. She explained with her hand over her heart that the potion she received from Lion worked absolute miracles on her health and energy. Even so, Lixil shook his head, utterly unable to accept or understand such a simple explanation. Sylvia suggested that if he was truly curious to find out the truth, he should go check on his brother with his own eyes. She recalled that he used to follow his brother around everywhere when he was little, making the young man blush and say that that was a long time ago. The elderly woman laughed and guaranteed that everything she was saying was the truth, advising that if he got curious later on, he should do something. She suggested that it would not be a bad idea to tail Lion for an entire day, leaving the young mage quite thoughtful. Lixil confesses that he could not stop her because he saw how relieved she looked, but he still thinks it is impossible that his goofy brother did all of that. Determined to verify the truth on his own, he resolves to head over to the Mimir forest, where they said Lion usually spends his time. Night falls over the Mimir forest, a dark and dense location that belongs to the vast territory of the Astaire family walking in the dark. Lixil complains that the place remains as gloomy as always and does not even have a decent path to walk on. He wonders what Lion finds so interesting there, since he could simply ask John to fetch whatever herb he needed. Suddenly, a constant sound of strikes on the dirt catches the young man's attention, making him wonder what that sound is in the middle of nowhere. Lixil walks a bit further and finally finds Lion on his knees on the ground. Concentrated on some strange activity in the dirt, observing from behind a tree, he sees his brother holding something glowing and hot, entirely clueless as to what on earth he is doing. At that, Lion opens his mouth wide, about to bite that hot root straight out of the damp soil. Lixil goes into absolute panic thinking his brother is about to eat something filthy and uses his magic, firing a command for him to stop right there. He shouts that Lion cannot eat something so dirty and fires an ice spell that blasts the food away, making his brother yell in terror. The wind settles down and the two just stand there staring at each other with super comical faces, not fully getting what just happened. Lion drops to his knees crying in pure despair when he sees that his delicious roasted banana sweet potato was crushed and turned completely inedible. Highly irritated, he turns around shouting to know who is there, leaving Lixil confused by that whole over-the-top reaction. Recognizing Lixil, Lion asks what he is doing there and the younger brother panics for having completely blown his secret cover. Lixil gets nervous and starts wondering if his older brother went out there just to meet him in a planned way. Meanwhile, Lion panics thinking his baby brother went out there just to keep a close eye on him, which was not true at all. Lixil apologizes for the sudden spell but says he could not let him eat something filthy, to which Lion fires back saying it is just a sweet potato. Lixil asks in a highly scientific way if he is referring to the starch-rich tuber, leaving Lion confused, not knowing how to answer. The older brother is shocked and asks if he has truly never eaten a sweet potato in his entire life, leaving Lixil looking pretty embarrassed. Lion says he is missing out on the best part of life, while Lixil wonders to himself if eating that is really such a major deal. The blonde youth asks his brother to sit down right there for a second, alerting him that he is going to dig up a few more sweet potatoes for them to eat. Lion turns around with a mischievous smile on his face and asks if the younger brother knows how to use fire element spells. He asks if his brother can light up a small campfire for them and Lixil agrees saying that is not difficult at all. Lixil sits down elegantly on top of a fallen log, watching the beautiful campfire he just lit, using his magic. Lion returns, carrying a whole pile of sweet potatoes in his arms, and asks if everything is ready, getting a positive answer from the younger one. Without thinking twice, he tosses all the sweet potatoes straight into the blazing flames, leaving Lixil completely astonished by the move. Lixil fears they will burn completely. But Lion calms his brother down, explaining that the thick skin protects the inside to roast it perfectly. The two brothers sit side by side in the quiet of the dark forest. Just watching the campfire sparks drift up into the sky, Lixil decides to break the ice and start saying something to his brother in a shy manner. Lion smiles and comments in a friendly way that stepping out of the routine and doing something different helps immensely to clear people's minds. He adds that pushing yourself is good, but taking a break is also crucial, and Lixil agrees, saying he understands what he meant. Seeing the delicious scent in the air, Lion alerts him that the sweet potatoes are ready and calls his brother over so they can eat together. Lixil holds the warm, golden sweet potato in his hands and takes his first bite, surprised by the texture and the wonderful flavor. Upon taking that first bite of the roasted sweet potato, Lixil is completely blown away by the wonderful flavor of that simple food. He admits with a blush that it is truly delicious, and Lion joyfully explains that they are called banana sweet potatoes. Their territory has never had a harsh winter, but the forest at night is usually very cold and dark, giving you that craving to eat something hot. The young man remembers that eating warm, roasted sweet potatoes paired with fish bread is the best possible combo to survive this cold weather. Lion watches his brother eating the sweet potatoes at a super fast pace and realizes that the younger kid truly has a gigantic appetite. He thinks to himself that boys that age eat like monsters, and remembers that back when he was a student, he also lived starved and ate ramen all the time. Lixil looks down at the ground and gasps when he sees the massive pile of empty skins, wondering to himself when it was that he ate so many sweet potatoes. Lion comments with a smile that he is relieved to see that the snack pleased his palate, leaving the younger brother pretty embarrassed and stammering. The younger one confesses that he did enjoy it, and Lion tells him to eat as much as he wants, thanking him for working so hard for the family in his place. Lixil comments with a sad look that while being sick is tough, it is also painful for the ones who just have to watch without being able to do anything. Lion listens in silence and thinks to himself that he never considered his fragile condition as a form of suffering or a burden. He stares at his brother on the other side of the campfire and guarantees that he definitely never blamed the younger brother for any of that. Lixil smiles subtly and confesses that, in reality, he feels jealous of his older brother because he has a precious quality that he himself lacks. The younger one gestures nervously, saying he is not unhappy with his position and that he will keep giving it his all, making Lion laugh and say that is enough, looking at that embarrassed reaction. Lion concludes with an affectionate smile that his younger brother is still just a cute kid. The older one stands up and advises that he is at the perfect age to be a little selfish and do whatever he wants once in a while. If he gets tired of studying, Lion walks over to him and gives him a friendly pat on the incredible effort the younger brother has made for everyone up to this day underneath the starry sky. Lixil thinks to himself that Sylvia was absolutely right and feels very happy that he went out to find and chat with his brother. Sometime later, Lion is sitting on his bed checking the system and notices surprised that he has already managed to accumulate over 70,000 shillings. He realizes that he will soon be able to use the shilling shop and celebrates that his level climbed significantly while he was preparing the medicines for Sylvia. The young man laughs to himself, thinking it is a shame his grandfather got rejected by the housekeeper, but concludes that their personal life is none of his business. Lion stretches, happy that he got closer to Lixil, and thinks that since he is not at risk of getting kicked out for now, he should just relax and kick back. At that, someone knocks softly on the young nobleman's room door and he answers promptly, telling the person to come in. The young man greets whoever is walking in but quickly stops talking and gets completely when he sees the person opening the door. A beautiful young lady with red eyes introduces herself as Elvia, his new personal maid, but Lion senses right off the bat that something is very off there. He quickly deduces that it is Sylvia transformed and thinks that in a fantasy world with dwarves, it is perfectly normal for other races to exist. The young man smiles and says he is looking forward to working with her, and Elvia kindly asks to be called whenever he stands in need of anything. Before she steps away, Lion smiles affectionately and thanks the young lady in a sincere way. He comments joyfully that thanks to her help, he feels like he and his brother Lixil finally managed to get a whole lot closer. Elvia plays dumb and says she does not comprehend what he means, making Lion laugh and tell her not to worry about it. The young nobleman adjusts his bag and asks if they can keep that intriguing conversation going at another time. As he opens the door to leave the room, he explains friendly that he has a set appointment to hang out with Lixil on this day. The scene shifts to the busy streets of the local village, where several local residents are chatting happily under the sun while they walk. Lixil observes his brother in silence and thinks that no matter how much he analyzes the situation, all of this remains very strange. He questions how Lion's stamina stays so low despite him climbing the mountain every single day, remembering the thousands of times his brother passed out. Lion walks panting and wiped out, wondering if that is even normal or if he urgently stands in need of a checkup with some temple priest. Lixil notices his exhaustion and decides to walk slower, fearing that his older brother might get sick before the important succession ceremony. He plans to find a priest in secret to examine his brother without the temple or the family finding out, brainstorming the ideal method for it. The youth remembers that religious doctrine supports volunteer work, so participating in charities would be flawless to get close to the clerics. Lion asks where they are heading and Lixel explains that, so they do not draw attention, they are going to buy items to create a good disguise. The older brother asks if they are heading to a regular clothing store to do that, but the younger one denies it on the spot. Lixel turns around with an excited smile and reveals that their destination is, in reality, an authentic magic tool shop. The scene shows the well-decorated storefront of the magic establishment with wind chimes jingling softly at the place's entrance. Lion is fascinated upon entering and confesses he did not know the place, and Lixel explains that it is a secret shop that shouldn't sell anything illegal. The older one is surprised and jokes that a probable no is not the safest answer for that situation, leaving the younger brother looking awkward. Still checking out the shelves filled with potions and strange items in the shop, Lion takes a thoughtful pause and observes something curious. He finds it weird that almost all the fascinating items there, like sound-amplifying earrings and automatic pens, look like children's toys. Lixel clears his throat embarrassed and shares that he discovered the shop back during his academy days, guaranteeing that the tools are extremely useful and effective. Suddenly a chubby bald man emerges from behind the counter, opening his arms and agreeing with absolute enthusiasm with Lixel's words. The shop owner demonstrates an automatic hair washer and proudly announces that they sell everything there except for hair growth tonic. Lixel lets him know they are looking for disguise items, and the merchant answers joyfully that he definitely has what they need. He gestures in an over-the-top way and points to the shelf, saying that everything around there works as a disguise. The man explains that the cheapest items, like bracelets and insoles that slightly alter one's appearance, are located over on that side. Then he pulls a cord and showcases the premium options, saying they are highly effective items to change one's hair, but a bit pricey. They check out a special hair clip that allows one to change their hair and eye color for 10 hours, without anyone noticing. The door chime jingles as the two brothers exit the shop, hearing the owner kindly ask them to come back anytime. Lixel asks what he thought of the place, and Lion answers smiling that he found it all very fun and plans to visit more times. Lion notices that the owner put a few freebies in the bag, but Lixel figures it shouldn't be anything special because that man is not generous. However, taking a closer look at the package contents while they walk, Lion is heavily surprised by what he finds inside. The system reveals an artisan's repair kit capable of fixing any item, leaving the young man shocked to score something so valuable as a freebie. Lixel says he has no use for those tools and tells his brother to keep it all, leaving Lion impressed by such generosity. The younger brother suggests they put on the disguises already, and Lion agrees, pointing to a very quiet and peaceful alley nearby. A powerful blue energy wraps around Lion's body the exact moment he puts on the magical disguise item. Lion looks at the result and praises Lixel's transformation, finding it amazing how his commoner look turned out totally flawless. Lixel says that disguise is more than enough to walk around freely and asks if they should head out, getting an excited yes. Upon arriving near the water of a mill, Lion gets confused and asks why they went there if they were going to do volunteer work. Lixel explains that flour is one of the donation items, so they needed to stop by the mill first to secure the order. He shares that the place also bakes delicious fresh bread, leaving Lion surprised, since he thought mills only ground grain. Lixel swallows hard and thinks to himself that besides the flour, there is another secret reason why he chose to go precisely out there. The mill owner, Nicholas, greets them with a massive smile and says he was expecting them, being exactly the person Lixel wanted to find. The younger brother knows that Nicholas is a devotee famous for donations in the territory and that by making friends with him, he will manage to get into the temple. He dreams of managing to find a temple priest. While Nicholas asks if the wheat milling worked out well and Lixel confirms it, the miller praises the incredible quality of the wheat and joyfully shares that he was even moved to see grains so flawless and without any pests. Nicholas asks why they need so much flour and Lixel makes up a story that he was moved to see starving children and decided to donate. Nicholas praises the beautiful gesture and asks if they have already chosen where to donate and Lixel asks for some recommendation from the miller himself. The man gets thoughtful while Lixel secretly roots with all his might that he recommends. Nicholas suggests donating to the orphanage maintained by the temple, leaving Lixel secretly vibrating with joy because his plan worked out flawlessly. The younger brother asks how many children live there and the miller answers that it is not many. It should be around 30 or so. Lixel comments that he thought the temple had better resources, but Nicholas explains that their funding was cut recently. He mentions that since magic is the priority there, the temple does not receive donations from the major magic families, who find that a bit weird. The miller hopes the young men help the orphanage. When suddenly Lion interrupts and asks his brother to wait a moment, Lion remembers that the mill bakes its own bread and points out that donating just the flour would make the children wait a long time to eat something. He suggests with tons of excitement that they bake some bread right there on the spot so the children could enjoy it right away. He thinks that they might not have the other ingredients and that freshly baked bread would definitely make everyone a whole lot happier. Lix loves the idea and guarantees that it is totally possible. Bragging that his bakery is famous for the quality of its bread, Lixil gets thoughtful and notices that he was so focused on his brother that he did not even stop to analyze the actual needs of the children. He smiles to see his brother being so helpful and concludes that Lion is truly a very attentive and kind person to others. Lixil praises his brother's excellent idea and Nicholas excitedly agrees, leaving Lion super happy with everyone's approval. With everything decided, Lion calls everyone to start preparing and baking the bread doughs immediately in the bakery. The system displays on the screen the bags of 1-star whole wheat flour and the bottles of 2-star olive oil on the counter. Lixil analyzes the ingredients and thinks that the 2-star olive oil is going to add a very rich and flavorful touch to the bread recipe. The miller explains they are going to make classic whole wheat bread, a very simple recipe to bake and one that the children are definitely going to love. Nicholas rolls up his sleeves with confidence and suggests they start by preparing just a small amount of test dough. He teaches that first, they must knead the wheat flour well with the correct amount of salt, organic yeast, and fresh milk. After that, the dough must be placed in a container well greased with olive oil to rest and rise a lot. As soon as the dough doubles in size, they must punch it down to remove all the air from inside and mix in crushed sunflower seeds. Nicholas finishes the step-by-step recipe showcasing that the round little dough is totally ready to hit the oven. Lixil observes how easy the process is and thinks that compared to the complexity of magic, making bread is something incredibly simple. He turns around to see if Lion is finished already, but the miller asks surprised if the young master has still not finished shaping his dough. Lion lets him know he is going to need a little more time and Nicholas understands and decides to put his and Lixil's doughs to bake first. The miller opens the oven with a friendly smile to check if the breads they prepared are finally done. Upon opening the oven, they come face to face with one of the breads completely burnt, black, and crumbling all over the baking sheet. Nicholas says that breads burn if you put too much dough, but consoles Lixil by telling him that it was his first attempt and that the other bread turned out great. At that, the miller catches a very pleasant scent in the air and notices that Lion's batch also just finished baking. He decides to open the other oven to take a look at the wheat breads that the oldest heir prepared. A radiant golden glow bursts from inside the baking sheet, leaving the three of them completely amazed by such sheer beauty. The system describes the whole wheat bread made by Astery as flawless and crispy, and Lion hits level 2 in the cooking skill. Nicholas stares at the baking sheets of flawlessly glowing golden bread and asks heavily shocked how he managed to make something so perfect. Lixil is also surprised and asks how his brother managed to do that, but Lion just scratches his head smiling and says he did nothing major. The blonde youth explains affectionately that he wanted the children to eat the tastiest bread possible today, even if he cannot do this all the time. He shares that he scored the top of the dough to make it look nicer and the result exceeded his expectations, leaving the miller speechless. Nicholas notices the brother's sincere affection for the kids and Lixil praises his brother's talent, who thanks him friendly. The miller asks if they mind continuing to bake on their own, explaining in a hurry that he really needs to go somewhere urgent. Lixil accepts immediately and apologizes for holding him up so long, but Nicholas guarantees that that was no trouble at all. The man runs off in a rush and shouts that he will return as fast as he can manage to help the young masters. Lixil fears he got in Nicholas's way, but Lion reassures his brother and says they should keep baking the doughs until he returns. The younger one adjusts his gloves and says he will push himself not to lose to him, and Lion jokes that then he cannot make it easy either. On Lion's system screen, notifications pop up showing that his progress to become a successful baker is climbing fast. The two keep pulling batches of flawless, glowing bread out of the oven and the achievement progress climbs even further. Suddenly, the miller's heavy footsteps are heard at the entrance and he alerts them out loud that he has finally returned. Lion turns to receive him with a friendly smile, but is completely left blank when he notices what is going on outside. Nicholas did not return alone, but rather accompanied by a crowd of local residents who brought various donations. They share that Nicholas told them about their kindness to the orphanage and explain that they also decided to help out however they could. A blonde woman shares that her husband wanted to come but got busy at the forge, making Lion realize she is the wife of one of the dwarves. Lion makes a subtle hush sign so she does not reveal his true identity to his brother in a careless way. The blonde woman places a heavy bag of supplies on the ground with total ease, surprising the young man with her massive strength. The other residents begin to unload and pile up several bags of groceries, bottles of milk, and other provisions. A very robust and muscular woman unloads a giant pile of potato sacks onto the bakery floor all at once. Lixil is highly impressed by her forearms and her incredible strength, remembering they said she used to wrestle bears when she was young. The younger brother comments emotionally on how generous the donations were, and Lion agrees, saying that the people of the fiefdom are truly very kind. Lixil reflects that this happens when you put sincere effort into things and feels embarrassed for having thought only of his own interests. He glances at the blonde youth out of the corner of his eye with a look of deep admiration and thinks that as long as his older brother recovers, everything will work out. He joyfully concludes that his brother, Lion, is truly destined to accomplish very grand feats in the future. A few hours later, they arrive at the orphanage maintained by the village temple under a bright blue sunny sky. The orphanage director cries tears of emotion and immensely thanks the young nobles for bringing so many valuable supplies. She asks how she can possibly pay for such generosity, but Lion smiles humbly and says he is just happy to be able to help out. The little children run to peek into the basket and praise the incredible aroma of the fresh bread while the director tells them to say thank you. The orphans open the boxes with tons of excitement and celebrate happily when they see that they also scored beautiful new clothes. The woman asks if they themselves would like to deliver the warm bread to the children while she carries the other donations inside. Lion kneels down affectionately and begins to distribute the bread one by one to the happy orphans, who thank him while praising the delicious scent. While everyone celebrates joyfully all around, Lion suddenly hears a noise and notices something strange out in the yard. Looking past the garden trees, he notices a dark-haired boy who is staring at him with a lonely distant gaze. The little boy panics upon being noticed by Lion and bolts out of there in a rush, leaving the blonde heir quite curious. Lion points toward the direction where the boy fled and asks the director who he was, and she answers that that boy's name is Peter. She apologizes for his behavior, explaining that the children there are small and do not know how to react to noble charity. Lion watches the direction where the boy ran and murmurs his name in a reflective way out in the orphanage yard. Pixel approaches with his empty straw basket and lets him know that they finished feeding almost all the children there. He notices that his older brother is grabbing a basket and asks where he is heading with those remaining breads. Lion turns around with a gentle smile on his face and explains that he needs to go find Peter because he is the only one who has not received his bread yet. The director explains that Peter had adoptions cancelled because he is shy and because of that he started refusing any food or donation he received. Lion observes the boy from a distance and thinks he looks to be the exact same age as the fur tanner's kids back on his property. Looking at the curled-up boy's legs, the young man concludes with worry that Peter is definitely way too skinny for his age. He resolves to approach quietly and calls the little boy by his name, making Peter flinch and curl up even tighter. Lion sits down beside him on the grass and shares that he brought something tasty that was left over from the other kids, offering a piece of bread. He tries to pique his appetite by saying that the whole wheat bread he baked is incredibly soft, flavorful, and piping hot. The attempt works instantly because little Peter's stomach growls very loudly, snitching that he is heavily starving. Lion jokes saying that he is indeed hungry, leaving the boy extremely embarrassed and wanting to vanish from the spot. The young man realizes that if the boy refuses food even while being this hungry, his problem is way more serious than a simple temper tantrum. He concludes that Peter needs some time to chill out and decides to just keep sitting there near him in silence and with patience. Far off, Lixel says goodbye to the director and thanks her for her hard work while getting ready to enter the orphanage building. Peter wakes up slowly under the tree's shadow and realizes, confused, that he ended up accidentally taking a nap during the afternoon. The boy stretches, thinking that all the hypocritical volunteers have already left and complains out loud about how annoying they are. He complains that they only come for the pleasure of donating and never return when he is caught off guard by Lion's voice asking if he woke up. Peter jumps from fear and shouts, asking why the young man is still there, and Lion explains laughing that he did not want to wake him because he was sleeping well. Lion holds out the golden bread and asks if he does not want to eat, confessing that he himself is dying of hunger and will split the food. Peter turns his face away pouting and grumbles, making Lion ask calmly if he is truly not going to accept even a piece of the snack. The blonde youth says it is fine and alerts him that in that case, he himself will take action regarding that warm bread. Without hesitating, Lion rips the soft bread in half in a very flashy way, spreading that delicious aroma through the garden air. Lion takes a massive bite out of his half, leaving Peter completely shocked and asking indignantly what he is doing. Lion says with his mouth full that it is a waste to throw food away and that he is going to eat it all, leaving the little boy not knowing what to say to that. Peter goes into upon noticing that the young man is about to definitively eat the other half of the bread that was supposed to be his. The boy lunges quickly and snatches the bread from his hand. Shouting desperately that he himself is going to eat that half, Peter takes the first bite and his eyes glow with emotion upon feeling how incredibly flavorful that simple bread is. The boy devours the bread with immense appetite, while Lion watches him with a welcoming and very satisfied smile to see the boy eat. As soon as the boy finishes eating the last piece, Lion holds out another whole bread and offers it to him in a sweet way. The young man smiles and explains that that piece was actually supposed to be his own portion, but that he insists on giving it to him. Peter stares at Lion's blue eyes glowing under the sun and thinks that all of this is being extremely bizarre and different from the usual. He notices that it is just ordinary bread without any special magical ingredient, not understanding the reason why it is so delicious. The boy honestly questions why on earth that simple food has such a wonderful and comforting flavor. He remembers that adult charities were always just for show and for them to feel like kind people in front of others. Peter sadly remembers couples who pretended to like him and then returned him, saying that he did not feel like a real son. The boy cries in silence while biting the bread and bitterly concludes that all adults are liars and selfish. At that, Lion catches his attention and asks with sympathy if little Peter knew a curious fact about older people. He says that adults skip meals when they are sad and regret it later, praising the boy for eating well. Even though he is upset, Lion smiles in a warm way and confesses that he prepared that bread, hoping that someone would get very happy while savoring it. The young man says he is very happy that Peter is enjoying the food so much, leaving the boy quite touched and speechless. Lion asks in a playful way if he is crying, but Peter blushes and shouts that it is just because the bread is way too delicious. The young man laughs and asks if that is truly the reason, and little Peter nods his head, confirming it shyly. Under the golden light of late afternoon, the boy finally offers a sincere thank you for the young noble's affection. Lion extends his pinky finger and promises that on his next visit he will bring even more freshly baked bread for him to eat. The boy stares at his hand surprised and asks if it is truly a promise, and Lion guarantees that he has never broken an oath in his entire life. The young man asks with a confident smile for Peter to remember that well from now on, they lock pinkies, sealing the promise, and Peter smiles, saying he will eat 2 whole breads next time. Lion pats his head and jokes that he should eat 3 instead, laughing at the boy who protests in a friendly way. The orphanage director observes the scene from afar, moved, and murmurs, impressed by the heir's attitude. She wonders how long it has been since she last saw little Peter smile with so much happiness like that out in the orphanage yard. She feels embarrassed for having distanced herself from the children with the excuse of being busy and notices that she just needed to show sincerity. The woman watches the two walking hand in hand and concludes that someone as sincere and kind as Lion deserves all of God's blessings. At sunset, the children and the director say goodbye waving cheerfully, and Lion and Lix will wave back before heading away. The director runs and asks for the young men to stay a bit longer, saying she cannot let such kind benefactors leave just like that. She shares in a hurry that she contacted the priest urgently and that he is coming to the orphanage today to pray for the children there. The woman suggests that they receive a blessing prayer from the cleric before they split, leaving Lixel and Lion surprised by the invite. Lixel celebrates that the plan worked and accepts politely, saying it would be rude to decline such a kind and thoughtful offer. The director gets very happy with the positive answer and kindly asks for the 2 young nobles to follow her this way. At that, the sound of horse hooves echoes loudly outside, announcing that the priest's carriage has just arrived at the orphanage. The priest Licht pulls back the curtain and observes the location through the window, revealing himself to be a young man with glasses and a very serious appearance. In the office, Lixel whispers, asking if Lion does not want to postpone the meeting, worried that the temple cleric might do some harm to him. Lion agrees on the spot and stands up, making up a story that he suddenly remembered a very important task to handle back at the mansion. Lixel is surprised by the rush, and Lion says goodbye cheerfully, telling the younger brother to do what he needs to while he goes back to his training. The younger brother reflects that it was actually better that way, because it would be very bad if the cleric discovered who they are and held some grudge against the family, thinking that he needs to evaluate the priest first. Lixel opens the room door and listens to a gentle voice welcoming him. The high priest Licht greets him with his hands together, wishing that divine grace be with that young and generous anonymous donor. Lixel confirms that he prefers to maintain his anonymity, and the cleric explains that he found out about everything from the orphanage director herself. The youth notices that Licht is pretty young, and concludes that because he came to pray personally outside the temple, he shouldn't be an ordinary cleric. Licht offers tea and thanks him on behalf of everyone for the generous donations, but Lixel modestly says that that was the effort of many people. He reveals that the true mind behind that whole action of donating the warm breads was, in reality, his older brother. The priest asks if he is referring to the young man who had to leave earlier due to not feeling very well, and Lixel confirms it. Lixel clasps his hands worried and reveals that his older brother has always had a very fragile health and that he suffers from a severe illness. He confesses that the true reason for going there was not charity, but rather an intentional attempt to introduce his sick brother to him. Licht smiles with serenity and calms the youth, lamenting that such a charitable person with a good heart is suffering with his health. The cleric reveals that he also had to sneak out of the temple to go there, leaving Lixel quite surprised by the revelation. The younger brother observes Licht adjusting his glasses and wonders anxious if he plans to refuse the treatment, unable to read his expression. After thinking a bit in silence, the priest finally sets a deadline and says he will meet them 3 days from now. Licht suggests that they return together at that exact time so he can finally examine and treat the older brother's condition. 3 days later, back in his room at the mansion, Lixel comes running and shouting for his brother, startling Lion, who lets out a comical yell. The younger brother snaps, asking why he is still awake in the middle of the night, and Lion justifies himself saying he simply could not sleep. Lion asks the reason for all that rush and Lixel excitedly reveals that the priest finally agreed to examine his health. The older one gets confused, but Lixel explains that the cleric wants to help out due to feeling an immense gratitude for everything they donated. Lion thinks to himself that he is not sick because the mana shock vanished after awakening the system and he never had other ailments. The young man remembers that he even gained plenty of stamina lately but decides to accept the meeting because he figures that is a good opportunity. Lion smiles saying he accepts the invite gladly, leaving his younger brother extremely relieved and with his eyes glowing from joy. Lixel comments that curiously the meeting was set for the middle of the night and Lion finds the unusual time chosen by him a bit strange. 3 days later, at the orphanage, Lion observes fascinated a flask of high-quality holy water that can only be obtained from great clerics. Lixel calls for his brother, who turns around and finds the younger brother accompanied by the high priest Licht, who observes the duo in silence. Lion bows politely and greets him, and Licht wishes that divine grace accompany those young men with such generous hearts. The high priest opens the office door with friendliness and invites the two brothers to sit down so they can chat calmly. Upon sitting down, Lion says he has a curiosity to ask and Licht smiles gently and tells him to speak freely. The blonde asks if there is any special reason for the meeting to be set for the middle of the night and the priest gets thoughtful for a moment. Licht confesses that he had a very striking dream with the duo recently, leaving Lion and Lixel quite curious about that revelation. He explains that clerics with great power sometimes receive divine revelations through dreams which are also known as prophetic dreams. Lixel asks what kind of dream that was and the cleric laughs in a friendly way, saying right off the bat that it was nothing. All that grand list reveals that he dreamed of children sleeping happily in a field with the two brothers right beside them, protecting everyone's sleep. He says he woke up with such a good feeling that he wanted to meet them, but in secret he admits that he also needed to confirm a suspicion. The cleric locks his eyes on the young men and thinks to himself that he wanted to see personally what kind of people those were who appeared out of nowhere in his vision. Licht analyzes Lixel out of the corner of his eye, noticing that the younger brother is a very young, elegant mage who knows how to speak in an extremely refined way. He deduces they are from the noble Astri family and wonders if the goal is truly the treatment or if the mages are seeking information on the temple. Licht asks out loud if he can begin the medical exam and Lixel agrees and says he will wait outside so he does not get in the priest's way. The cleric says he is going to start and positions himself behind the chair. While Lion takes a deep breath and asks him to be careful with him, Licht activates his holy magic and a powerful glowing green light wraps around Lion's back, intensely inside the office. The priest Licht stops the channeling of holy power suddenly and stares at Lion's back with a very confused expression. He questions to himself why there is zero change in Lion's body since he applied the blessing the correct way and possesses plenty of holy power. He tries to concentrate even more divine energy into his hands and begins to sweat from nervousness, wondering anxious if he ended up making some mistake. Licht is shocked by the lack of reaction from the magical energy while Lion just calmly confirms that he is feeling the effect. The young man smiles wrapped in a glowing aura and comments that his body is actually feeling way better now. Lion alerts him that amount of blessing is already enough for today, leaving the priest heavily dazed and stammering. Licht thinks to himself that there only exist 3 reasons for someone's body to not react in a visible way to the power of a high priest. The reasons would be rejection by a higher-ranking mage or the, body being way too healthy right from the start without needing any healing. And the very last reason would be the patient being born with a very short life expectancy, which leaves the cleric extremely worried. Licht walks up to Lion and says he commits to helping him in an absolute way in case he stands in need of his medical assistance in the future. At that, he holds Lion's hands with a lot of strength and firmness, startling the young man with that dramatic and sudden reaction. The cleric begs him to go to the temple and say his name whenever he feels severe pains that prevent him from sleeping, leaving Lion pretty confused. Licht guarantees that he will do everything to heal him, insisting to know if he understood, and Lion agrees a bit startled by that. Upon saying goodbye, Lion thanks him from his heart for all the cleric's attention, and Licht answers that he can look for him whenever he wants. The two brothers begin to walk back home, while the priest watches them drift away with a highly worried gaze. Lion scratches his head, intrigued by the over-the-top health wishes he received, and wonders the reason why he is feeling so strange about it. The carriage keeps traveling and crosses the gates of the majestic Astri castle, which glows under a beautiful rainbow in the morning sky. Lixel celebrates that his brother's health seems better and says the trip was worth it, and Lion joyfully agrees with the younger brother. Lion thinks to himself that the holy power relieved all the muscle pains and the exhaustion built up from spending the whole night baking bread. The blonde notices that the younger brother is rocking deep dark circles and asks if he is very tired, but Lixel covers it up saying he is fine. The younger one says goodbye, saying he needs to do his morning mana control training, leaving Lion surprised by such dedication. Lixel walks away, pulling ahead slowly, and Lion warns that spending the night wide awake and pushing himself too hard like that is going to bring problems later. The blonde watches his brother leave and thinks to himself that besides the air training routine already being rigid by itself, Lixel has been even more busy. Worried about his brother's burnout, Lion chats with Elvia, and she suggests that he talk to the patriarch about the ceremony schedule. Elvia comments that the patriarch must also be very busy with the coming-of-age ceremony prep, giving a great idea to Lion. Lion gets hyped and decides to pay a visit to his grandfather, bringing a few sweet cookies prepared by himself with the help of the worker in the mansion's kitchen. The blonde youth puts on an apron and begins to prepare and knead the ingredients on the table under Elvia's gaze. Lion begins to punch down the cookie dough with tons of energy and vigor, concentrated on making the best possible recipe for his grandfather. He thanks Sylvia for the excellent idea and wonders if his grandfather likes sweets, since cookies are light and easy to enjoy. She corrects him, reminding him that her name is Elvia, and warns that his grandfather does not love sweets, but will eat anything the young master prepares. Lion gives a warm smile and says that either way, he truly hopes the patriarch likes the flavor of the cookies a lot. Suddenly, the blonde youth remembers something and lets out a shout of surprise, leaving the worker intrigued by that reaction of his. Elvia observes him opening a few bags of potatoes and gets a highly suspicious expression regarding what the heir plans to do. She asks surprised if he actually plans to add sweet potato into the cookie dough, and Lion confirms it with plenty of assurance. The young lady finds that combo of ingredients very unusual, but the heir hopes to prove to everyone that the flavor turns out wonderful. Lion slices the sweet potato very thin and explains that he will use its natural sugar, so his grandfather can savor the sweets without any guilt. He smiles very excited and begins to mold and give shape to each of the pieces of dough that he will place on the baking sheet. The young man uses cute molds of stars, cats, and little birds and thinks about asking the fur tanner to make new cutters later. With the shapes ready, he arranges the decorated cookies on the baking sheets and puts everything inside the very hot oven to bake. The system alerts him that the special banana sweet potato cookies are ready and that eating them helps to lower the body's exhaustion. Lion finds it weird that food has potion effects, but Elvia praises him, saying he created that amazing recipe all by himself. The worker suggests that he do the tasting to test the flavor, and the blonde accepts with tons of excitement to try one. Lion savors the cookie and celebrates that the flavor is even better than the ones he ate in his past life, leveling up his cooking skill. Elvia explains that sweets fight fatigue and guarantees that the patriarch is going to like it a lot because the recipe's sweetness level is flawless. The blonde youth thanks Elvia for the massive help in the kitchen, but she modestly answers that she only did her maid duty. Lion says he will take care of the rest of the cleanup by himself and tells her to go rest, leaving the worker heavily surprised by the dismissal. The young master smiles and friendly explains that he still has other secret things that he needs to prepare in that kitchen. He waits for her to step away because he cannot open his system menu and item inventory in front of Elvia without raising suspicion. With his cooking level increased, he decides to prepare a special drink to create an excellent synergy with the sweet cookies. He analyzes the magical herb options on the floating panel and decides to craft a training support drink to help his brother Lion decide to prepare the training support drink, a crimson beverage that he knows his grandfather and Lixel are going to like a lot. He finds the ingredients familiar and realizes the combo is flawless to accompany the cookies, needing to focus only on the quality. The young man begins to examine the items and sees that the fresh one-star oranges and lemons are of excellent quality for the recipe. Highly excited in the mansion's kitchen, Lion puts on the apron and gets ready to kick off the entire preparation process. He washes the fruits well, cuts them into thin strips, and simmers a low-level health potion over low heat. When the fruits are well cooked, he adds the star anise and waits until the refreshing flavor is extracted. As soon as the pleasant aroma begins to rise, the young man strains the hot drink with a sieve to remove the residue. Next, he adds a drop of magical rosemary oil directly into the cup to finish up the mixture. The drink is ready and Lion notices that it reminds him a lot of the mulled wine from his past life, being classified as alchemy support. He tries the liquid and loves the flavor, deciding that now is the ideal moment to serve the drink along with the bear cookies. The system creates the 2-star Astri family special drink set, which helps to fight exhaustion and body aches. For creating a complete menu for the first time, Lion unlocks an achievement, earns 3,000 gold coins, and stays satisfied with the result. After finishing all the work in the kitchen, the young man takes off the apron with a feeling of duty accomplished, holding the tray filled with glowing delicacies. He decides he is ready to go visit his grandfather in his office. Lion enters the patriarch's office and politely asks if his grandfather is very busy at that moment. Patrick asks what he is bringing and questions why the mansion servants are not carrying that for him. The blonde smiles and explains that he made it a point to bring everything personally, because he wanted to deliver the sweets himself. He places the tray on the desk and explains that he made the drink with a potion he created before, besides baking the cookies for them to eat together. The grandfather looks at the treat surprised and asks if the young man actually prepared all of that by himself, and Lion confirms it. Lion says he thought it would be a fun way to showcase his recent achievements in his kitchen skills. The blonde friendly offers the sweets, and Patrick hesitates for a moment before picking up a cookie in the shape of a bear. Upon taking the first bite, the patriarch goes into complete shock and feels that the sweet simply melts in his mouth. The grandfather catches the subtle scent of sweet potato and notices how the balanced sugar is flawless, being a totally special flavor. Lion sees his cooking level rise and gets very happy to notice that his grandfather actually liked the snack he prepared. Suddenly, Patrick tells his grandson to say what he wants, leaving Lion a bit confused by the elderly man's sudden question. The grandfather states that he wouldn't come all the way here just to bring sweets and tells him to say what the real business is, making the blonde laugh at his cleverness. Lion looks at his cup and comments that he heard say that his coming-of-age ceremony is going to happen soon. The grandson asks if they couldn't let Lixel rest comfortably until the day of the event, leaving the patriarch surprised by the request. He explains that the whole family will participate in the ceremony, but thinks the training routine the younger brother is facing is way too heavy. Lion asks to dial back the brother's training until the event, so everyone looks healthy, leaving Patrick deeply moved by the attitude. The elderly man tries to hold back his tears and thinks about how his grandson grew up and became an extremely attentive boy to the family. Patrick remembers that siblings could fight over the clan's leadership, but now they have built a strong fraternal affection that fills him with pride. The grandfather agrees to reduce the younger brother's training, leaving Lion radiant with happiness, but then asks if his grandson wants only that. The elderly man asks if he truly does not have any other request or special desire regarding the ceremony gifts. Lion answers confused that he does not want anything, and Patrick thinks about how his grandson lacks greed, considering that gifts are the high point of the party. The patriarch reflects that the coming-of-age ceremony also serves as a great opportunity to showcase the family's power. In that empire, managing to give whatever rare jewel or treasure the heir desired was the most elegant way to flaunt wealth. The grandfather thinks that the fact that his grandson says he does not want anything can only have one very specific meaning behind it. Patrick concludes with a dark gaze that his grandson wants him to pick out the flawless gift on his own and surprise everyone. Startled by the heavy and sudden aura that his grandfather began to emanate, the blonde youth quickly says goodbye to head away. Lion closes the door and leaves the elderly man alone in the office pensive while taking a sip of the hot drink. Patrick stays wondering what he must do to prepare the best possible gift for his grandson's coming of age. While walking down the hallway, Lion questions himself about what his grandfather meant by that very strange reaction. In another room, Lixel works wiped out at a desk filled with piles of documents when he hears someone shout his name outside. Lion kicks the door hard, startling his younger brother, who shouts surprised to see the blonde enter suddenly in a flashy way. The young man laughs at the mess in the study and jokes, saying he did not know his younger was the type who lived amidst so much disorganization. Lixel gets extremely embarrassed and confesses that he never wanted his brother to see him in such a pitiful state of clutter. The younger one asks what brought him there and Lion shows the tray explaining that he brought a snack he himself prepared to help with the exhaustion. The two sit on the couch and the younger brother grabs one of the cute bear-shaped cookies to take a generous bite. Lixel chews the sweet and is amazed, exclaiming with his mouth full that his older brother's cookie is incredibly delicious. Lixel praises Lion's manual skill, commenting that he had already noticed his older brother's talent ever since he saw him baking bread. The older one says that their grandfather usually passes many difficult tasks, so he suggests that the younger brother rest a bit until the day of the ceremony. He explains that he already managed to get the patriarch's permission because he noticed that his younger brother looked completely burnt out from training. So much, Lixel is deeply moved by his brother's worry and affection, thanking him from his heart for the help and the unexpected break. The younger brother explains that his exhaustion was not due to his studies, making Lion question startled if it was love letters from some girl. Lion thinks that his brother is at the age to get interested in girls. But Lixel clarifies that the worry is with the coming-of-age ceremony. Upon hearing that, the blonde finally understands that the younger brother is referring to the traditional magic ritual that the family performs at the event. This test is known as the Library Labyrinth, a portal that serves to guide the participant to the magic they stand most in need of. The place turns into an endless labyrinth if it is forced, but the end reserves a special magic item for whoever follows the rules and makes it out there. Finding it cute that his brother worries about him because he lacks mana, Lion tries to reassure him saying that the ritual is just a simple formality. Lixel shakes his head worried and reveals that the true problem with the coming-of-age ceremony, in reality, is the clothes chosen. The blonde youth gets confused by the answer and asks if the garments really are such a major problem to worry about. The younger one asks if his brother has already seen the official outfit that their grandfather ordered to be prepared for him to wear on the special day, and Lion says no. Lixel places the clothing sketch on the table and says it is that, revealing that their grandfather has a terrible secret weakness. Lion looks at the hideous sketch and realizes that the patriarch has absolutely zero fashion sense, feeling that his ceremony is ruined. The two immediately agree that an 8th Circle Archmage could never wear such a ridiculous outfit at a public event. The blonde gets confused because his grandfather has always dressed very well, but the younger brother explains that it was Sylvia who prevented his fashion disasters. Grateful for Sylvia's silent efforts, Lion decides to create a plan and thinks about making matching clothes for the whole family to wear on the day. Disguised in the city, the blonde goes to visit Leah at the workshop and the children run excited to receive the young master with much joy. He greets the little ones and delivers a pouch filled with decorated cookies that he himself prepared, leaving everyone very happy. Leah thanks him for such a valuable gift and asks what brought him there, while the young man explains that he needs to ask a favor of her. The woman gets curious and Lion asks about the talented tailor who used to work as a volunteer alongside them at the orphanage. The young man asks to be introduced to the man, leaving Leah surprised and a bit confused by the heir's sudden interest in the tailor. Lion explains that he was highly impressed by the tailor's unbelievable skills during their volunteer work period. He shares that the man could fit clothes perfectly for the children and create beautiful outfits using nothing but discarded scraps. The blonde says he urgently stands in need of someone with that talent and Leah answers that it is possible to find him, but showcases hesitation. Lion asks if there is any problem in introducing him and she thoughtfully warns that he will only understand the situation when he gets to the location. The young man follows the indicated coordinates and arrives at an isolated alley with a pretty abandoned and mysterious appearance. Upon stopping before an old boutique with a completely damaged sign, he wonders confused if that is truly the right place. The wooden sign begins to swing and make noise, leaving the blonde even more apprehensive and suspicious about that sewing workshop. Upon entering the dark shop filled with creepy mannequins, he finds it weird that such a talented professional works in a place like this. Lion calls for someone at the counter and suddenly a man with dark sunglasses emerges from the shadows welcoming the client in a cold way. In the blink of an eye, the tailor shifts his attitude and lets out a dramatic shout of joy upon realizing that he received a visit at his shop. The blonde tries to speak, but the tailor recognizes him as the young man from the orphanage, finding the different color of his hair and eyes strange, awkward. Lion explains that he is the oldest grandson of the Astri family and that he needed to use a disguise on that day for his safety. The tailor understands perfectly and says that a young nobleman certainly must have his reasons to walk around town disguised. The man asks what would bring such an important young man to his humble shop and the youth reveals that he is in search of an elite tailor. The tailor gets surprised and startled, commenting that a wealthy and powerful family like the Astris shouldn't need his services. He quickly invites the nobleman inside and suggests they sit down to chat calmly, indicating the way to the living room. Upon entering, Lion notices several Empire prestige medals on the shelf and the man says it is shameful to receive a visit there. The man offers a seat and says he will brew some tea, while Lion suggests they savor together the cookies he brought. The tailor serves the hot drink and apologizes for not having something better to offer due to his difficult financial situation. The blonde youth hands over the plate of sweets, saying he himself prepared them, leaving the experienced tailor completely jaw-dropped. The tailor remembers that the young man had also made the incredible breads donated to the orphanage and gets anxious to try that recipe. Very curious to discover the flavor of the bear cookies, he gladly accepts the snack offered by the young noble. Upon taking a bite, the tailor delights in the crispy texture and shouts, surprised that the flavor of the cookies is wonderful. He feels that the sweet melts quickly in his mouth, bringing a sensation that at first seems very pure, simple, and delicate. However, right after, the flavor transforms into something completely dramatic and intense, awakening strong emotions in the man's heart. The tailor feels the taste run through his chest as if it were the moving story of a prince in love with a simple peasant girl, moved by the culinary experience. The man cries from joy and states with enthusiasm that the word delicious is too little for that sweet. The tailor shouts in ecstasy that that is not just food, but rather a true work of culinary art. Andre thinks to himself that the young master is filled with fascinating contrasts. While Lion is relieved to see that the man loved the cookies, still very emotional, the tailor wipes his mouth with a napkin and praises the wonderful snack he just received from Lion. Andre shares that he almost cried from emotion and guarantees that eating that incredible sweet filled his mind with inspiration to work. The man thanks the noble's kindness for sharing something so delicious and promises to answer any question with total sincerity. The tailor deduces that the visit is to order special clothes and Lion confirms that he truly came all the way here with that great goal. Andre proudly states that he is excellent at creating patterns, cutting fabrics, and embroidering, but warns that there is a severe but in his career. The man alerts that the nobles are going to hate knowing that he designed the clothes and Lion might become a laughingstock at the event if he wears his creations. The tailor sadly reveals that he is the illegitimate son of a noble family, making Lion think about how prejudiced privileged people are. Andre explains that the rumors about his origin ruined his clientele and made the nobles abandon him for selling clothes to commoners too. The man suggests lying that the clothes were made by a beginner, but Lion interrupts him asking to first see the pieces he has already sewn. The tailor says that only simple commoner clothes are left in his shop, but Lion states that he just wants to evaluate the quality of his sewing. Andre pulls back the workshop curtain to show the stock, leaving the blonde youth completely paralyzed from shock when he sees what was out there. The man explains shyly that those are the pieces he sells to the neighbors, while Lion is impressed by the flawless finish. Upon seeing the clothes glow with 2- and 3-star evaluations on the system panel, the heir realizes he found a sewing genius. Lion analyzes the hanger surprised and understands that the tailor truly possesses an exceptional talent that goes way past normal standards. The blonde notices that creating 2-star clothes using ordinary cotton fabrics proves that the man's technical skills are divine. The youth excitedly thinks of the masterpiece this tailor would be capable of producing if he had access to top-quality magical materials. Lion looks firmly at Andre and declares, with a lot of conviction, that he wishes to wear clothes created by him at his important coming-of-age ceremony. The man hesitates from fear of embarrassing the noble, but the heir guarantees that no one will dare say a word and demands only to know if he accepts. The blonde youth raises 3 fingers and firmly explains that he will need 3 complete outfits ready by the official day of the grand ceremony. Lion asks the definitive question regarding his capacity, leaving the tailor quite tense and pensive in front of such an audacious proposal. The heir takes on all the responsibility and says the man just needs to decide if he has the necessary ambition to accept this challenge. Andre reflects on the unique chance to use noble fabrics without worrying about criticism, realizing that no tailor would refuse that. With his face red from so much excitement, the tailor bows and accepts the job with passion. To Lion's great satisfaction, the man grabs a notebook and a magic quill, excited, asking anxious what kind of clothes the young master desires and what details to include. Lion begins to detail that he wants elegant, clean clothes that bring a sense of unity to the family. Without looking old or childish, Andre goes into panic upon realizing that the powerful patriarch will also wear his creation and asks startled if the noble is sure about that. The blonde smiles calmly and asks what other noble's prejudice has to do with his family, showing that he does not care about the gossip, stammering. The tailor agrees that no one would dare speak ill of the Astri clan, which is as powerful as the imperial family itself. Lion confirms that that is exactly how things work, leaving the tailor in silence and extremely motivated by his assurance. Andre solemnly declares that he will use all his strength to produce the best clothes possible for the important family occasion. The man says he already has the flawless design in mind and asks if there are specific fabrics, and the youth pulls a mysterious catalog from his bag. Upon seeing the old, glowing book, the tailor goes into shock upon recognizing the legendary rare fabric catalog of the renowned Astri family. With tears in his eyes, the tailor says he could die happy just looking at that and asks permission to open the precious catalog. Lion grants the permission in a friendly way, and the tailor's trembling hands begin to open the ancient pages of that magic book. A powerful, intense golden light emanates from the catalog upon being opened, leaving the experienced tailor completely amazed by the glow samples of threads made by elves revealing top-quality, rare fabrics that are extremely difficult to come across. Andre is stunned to see samples woven with magic from mages and fairies, realizing that the legends about those fabrics were real. Lion asks if he liked any material, and the tailor answers that the true problem is that there is no fabric that he does not love. Suddenly, the man stops flipping through the catalog and is surprised to face a specific fabric sample that catches his attention, heavily. Lion asks what is wrong with the material, and Andre reveals that he met a young lady who loved wearing that same fabric in the past. The man shares that he never forgets the threads he touches and finds it amazing to see this material in the book, although there is zero information about it. Curious about the tailor's story, Lion steps closer to examine the details of the mysterious glowing sample, more up close. The panel reveals that the 3-star fabric was made by an archmage for his daughter, making Lion suspect his grandfather created it. Lion pieces it together and deduces that the lady from the past was his late mother, since the item description mentions the creation of an archmage. The youth decides on the spot to use this family relic in the matching clothes, and Andre excitedly guarantees that it is perfectly possible to utilize it. The tailor gets ready to start the noble's body measurements when suddenly they hear footsteps approaching the location. Licht enters the workshop asking if everything is settled and explains that he got delayed a bit to manage to bring some supplies. Andre is surprised by the mention of supplies and comments that there seems to be plenty of noise coming from outside the shop. Suddenly, Lion and Andre hear a firm voice outside ordering some things to be unloaded, startling the two in the workshop. Upon looking outside, they come face to face with several carriages filled with top-quality fabrics, materials, and sewing tools. Lixel emerges and reveals that he found out his older brother was keeping an eye on a certain tailor, bringing brand-new, luxurious equipment. The younger brother explains that he would spare no effort to help in the prep for his brother's unique and most important coming-of-age ceremony. Lixel gives a friendly smile and naturally states that this level of support on his part is just the basic thing he should do. Lion jokes about the massive amount of gifts and asks Andre if he prefers his old tools, but the man interrupts him. Crying from joy, the tailor enthusiastically shouts, asking to swap everything immediately for the brand new modern sewing machines. Later on, after organizing things, Andre politely thanks Lion's patience during the measurement-taking session for the clothes. The man firmly guarantees that he will do his best to create a masterpiece, while the heir asks him to work without stressing himself out. Before wrapping up the chat, Lion reveals that he has one more small personal favor to ask of the talented tailor when he has time. The blonde asks if he could teach him basic sewing techniques, leaving Lixel and Andre completely shocked by the request. Andre alerts that beginners usually get hurt a lot with needles and machines, but Lion calmly insists that there is no problem. The blonde explains that he does not want to do anything complex right now, just have a basic grasp, making the tailor ask what the reason for that is. Lion says he wants to understand the techniques to value all the effort and passion that Andre puts into every single stitch of the clothes he makes for him. Deeply touched by the youth's noble attitude, Andre agrees and explains that every stitch and cut truly carry an intention from the creator. The tailor makes a respectful bow and promises that he will hide nothing and will gladly teach everything he knows about sewing to Lion. Andre asks for permission to take Lixel's measurements first and leaves Lion free to explore and test whatever he wants in the renovated workshop. The sun begins to set on the horizon, illuminating softly and golden the beautiful storefront of Andre's sewing workshop. Lion walks through the room, observing the new tools and thinks about how all that equipment is incredible, no matter how many times he looks. He finds a worn-out pattern for cotton pants and wonders, surprised how the man managed to create great clothes with such bad fabrics. Lion holds the pants pattern and wonders curious if he should try to sew and join the fabric pieces himself at that moment. He reflects that he still lacks fundamentals and thinks it is better to start practicing hand sewing instead of using the modern machines right off the bat. The youth remembers he has the flawless item and pulls from his bag the artisan repair kit he won as a bonus in the magic shop earlier. Lion thinks that is the flawless opportunity to use the magic item and begins to handle the sewing materials focused at the table. To his great surprise, the kit's magic needle begins to glow intensely and shifts shape as soon as he holds it. The blonde is amazed to notice that the tool adapts to look brand new and that threading the needle happens in a totally automatic way. Satisfied with the magic utensil's advantages, he settles into the chair and decides to start practicing his first stitches on the fabric. The youth works focused before the large window while the soft evening light floods the entire cozy room of the sewing workshop. The heir gives a slight smile, concentrated on the manual work, and surprises himself noticing that sewing is a pretty fun and relaxing activity. He thought he would get irritated with the delicate task but feels a great calm and notices that his stitches are getting faster and straighter. Lion notices magic guidelines glowing on the fabric, facilitating the work, and wonders if that is also an effect of his sewing kit. Completing 80% of the pants repair, the system alerts him that the bad fabric turned into a decent product thanks to his diligence. The blonde hears applause and turns around startled. Seeing Andre and Lixel returning to the room after wrapping up the younger brother's measurement session, Lixel smiles saying he did not want to interrupt his brother's focus while the tailor runs to the table impressed by the fast progress. Andre detailedly analyzes the young man and shouts surprised that despite being a bit crooked, the result is excellent. The tailor begins to run and jump around the room driven crazy with joy, shouting that the young master's hand sewing reminded him of something vital. The man gestures with passion and explains that manual sewing is the true foundation of haute couture, something he almost forgot to practice. Andre begins to analyze the pattern with brilliant design ideas, making Lion comment amused that the man entered his own world. Lixel suggests they head back to the mansion for now and the older brother agrees on the spot, remembering today's important commitment. The younger brother compliments saying that they have a formal dinner scheduled with the family patriarch at the clan mansion tonight. In the clan's main office, the butler alerts Patrick that the young masters have already arrived and that they should go together to the dining hall. Still focused on his documents at the work desk, the elderly patriarch accepts the worker's alert and decides to wrap up his tasks. The patriarch walks calmly alongside his loyal butler through the long, luxurious hallways lit by the mansion's large chandeliers. The worker comments that it is rare for the three of them to dine together and Patrick answers that sometimes family moments like this are very necessary. The grandfather reveals that he does not work this hard for pleasure but does it only because it is the unique way to guarantee the protection of his beloved grandsons. The elderly man mentally complains about the excessive work imposed by the imperial family, even though 50 years have already passed since the end of the war. Patrick vents saying he just wants to spend time with his grandsons, but the butler smiling reminds him that 8th circle mages live a very long time. The worker opens the dining hall doors and the grandfather enters with pride, knowing he could not miss a meeting with his heirs. Upon entering the bright room, the patriarch is announced and feels a pleasant warmth in his chest upon seeing the warm reception from his two grandsons. Patrick observes Lion and Lixel sitting at the table and thinks to himself that he just wants to live in peace alongside the precious treasures left by his daughter. Seeing his grandson's warm smile, Patrick silently thinks that he cannot let anyone discover the true potential that the young man carries. Lion greets his grandfather but looking at the abundant feast on the table, begins to wonder if they didn't overdo the food amount a bit. Lixil smiles and explains that he made a special request to the chef since it had been a very long time since the whole family gathered in the same place. Lion agrees, remembering that before, he used to skip meals or eat nothing but tasteless sick person food while his grandfather dined out. The blonde realizes that due to their absence, Lixil probably spent the majority of his time dining completely alone at that massive table. He looks at the younger brother in silence and feels a squeeze in his chest, thinking about how the smaller brother must have felt extremely lonely all this time. Lixil comments that they should have more family dinners like this, leaving Lion emotional and determined to change that sad routine of theirs. The blonde youth reflects on how difficult and painful it must have been for the younger brother to bear all that loneliness and the family obligations entirely alone. He decides that starting today, he will ask the patriarch to organize the schedule so everyone can spend much more time together as a family. Determined to never let his brother eat alone again, Lion affectionately smiles while sharing that very special and joyful moment with him. Patrick finally settles into his spot at the head of the table while the butler serves the fine, elegant drink to kick off their dinner. The grandfather gives the order for them to begin eating, and the two brothers politely answer yes while starting to serve themselves from the abundant dishes. Silence takes over the elegant hall while each focuses on cutting and savoring the perfectly prepared meat that was served to them. Patrick breaks the silence by asking about the progress of Lixil's tasks, and the youth formally answers that everything is under control. The dinner mood goes back to being extremely quiet and tense, leaving the environment pretty uncomfortable for a family meal. Lion finds the lack of dialogue weird and thinks his grandfather could at least ask about his health or what gift he would like to score at the event. Knowing that cold environment was not what his brother wanted, the blonde youth resolves to take the initiative to start a new topic with his grandfather. Suddenly, he directly asks Patrick if he ever quilted any special fabric for his late mother, shocking the two at the table. The elderly man takes a sip of his wine to mask the nervousness and dryly answers that he has not the slightest clue what his grandson is talking about. The blonde notices the patriarch's discomfort upon touching on the subject of his late daughter, confirming that talking about their mother is still an open wound. Lion calmly explains that he met a tailor today and ended up finding a very rare piece of fabric kept in the family storage. He asks if Lixil remembers that glowing fabric that he himself had brought before, and the younger brother a bit hesitantly confirms yes. The blonde youth shares that the tailor revealed that in the past, a young lady of the high nobility loved wearing that precious magical fabric. The heir concludes that by being kept at the Astri mansion, that young lady could only be their mother, explaining the reason for his question. Patrick gets very serious with his grandson's detailed explanation and realizes that he can no longer avoid the painful topic regarding his late daughter. Talking about the boy's mother was, without a doubt, the most avoided and painful theme that the whole family tried to ignore, so as not to relive the suffering. Lion thinks that they cannot ignore this pain forever, because they will only manage to comfort themselves when they talk openly about who is already gone. The blonde decides to use the new matching clothes as a great excuse to bring the family closer and kick off a sincere dialogue among everyone. The patriarch takes a deep breath and breaks the long silence, confirming with a solemn tone that Lion is totally right in his guesses. Patrick reveals to his surprised grandsons that he himself was the one responsible for manufacturing with his own bare hands. That legendary glowing fabric. Lion gets very surprised by the elderly man's unexpected revelation and curious asks what the true reason was for him creating the fabric. The grandfather takes a sip of wine and says there was no grand reason, because as a father, it was natural to worry and want to protect his only daughter. He remembers that he feared she would get hurt or that the cold would do her harm, so he wove every thread with high-level protection spells. Patrick looks thoughtfully into space and comments in a nostalgic tone that it is incredible to think that special fabric still exists after so much time. Lyxl observes his grandfather and gets emotional hearing about the fabric created for his mother, feeling the love that the patriarch still keeps for her in his chest. The grandfather realizes that focusing on his own pain made his grandsons grow up lonely, feeling a deep regret for acting that way. Lion excitedly says he plans to use the fabric in the ceremony outfits and asks if there is enough, and the grandfather firmly guarantees that nothing will be lacking. The blonde youth asks when his grandfather will be free for the tailor to take his measurements, leaving the elderly patriarch totally paralyzed from fear. Patrick thought the matching clothes would be just for the brothers, but Lion smiling insists that his grandfather also needs to wear an identical outfit. Lyxl agrees and suggests bringing the tailor to the mansion to make things easier, leaving the grandfather without excuses to refuse the family invitation. Patrick gives in and decides to let Lion lead the project, making the blonde youth thank him very happily for the rare family unity opportunity. The heir mentally celebrates that he scored the permission because that way his grandfather won't ruin the event with his terrible and doubtful taste in fashion. Lion smiles, very satisfied for managing to bring everyone closer in a natural way, feeling relieved to focus only on the final preparations. From that landmark moment, all the preparations for the grand coming-of-age event began to flow perfectly without any hitches. Thanks to Andri's constant visits to the mansion, the production of the matching gala clothes was moving forward in an excellent manner and right on schedule. All the luxurious mansion decoration for the gala ceremony also followed the rigid timeline planned by the Astery clan servants. With the absolute support of LXL and Patrick handling everything with ease, Lion suddenly found himself without any major important task to do. However, thanks to that unexpected free time that was left to him, the blonde youth found an excellent opportunity to focus on another activity. He took advantage of the free hours to dedicate himself totally to tailoring practice, although he feels that something is still missing. To master the technique, Lion focuses on sewing the fabric quickly and thinks to himself that by this point of practicing so much, he should have already managed to release a reward. Lion receives the system notice that his tailoring level rose to apprentice but complains for not feeling any real change in himself. He indignantly asks himself why the tailored talent does not awaken. Even though he pushed himself to the maximum and sewed everything by himself from scratch, the blonde youth begins to get tense and startled while a pretty dark and worrying doubt crosses his mind at that moment. Lion goes into despair upon considering the terrible possibility of simply not being born with any natural talent for sewing. He tries to calm down, thinking that he has been sewing for a long time and that if he lacked talent, his cooking would be way worse than it is today. Lion questions himself if the difference lies in the utensils used or if he stands in need of a focused mentor to teach him to master the techniques. Frustrated with so many unanswered doubts about the system, the young master holds his head and shouts without knowing what the real problem is. Suddenly the maid knocks on the room door and alerts the young master that the tailor Andri just arrived at the mansion to see him. Lion asks if the clothes are ready and the young lady confirms they seem finished but alerts that the man's expression was strange. The blonde gets intrigued to know that the visitor's face looked unusual and asks the maid to better explain what happened. The servant answers with a serious, intense look that it looked as if something very terrible and severe had gone wrong during manufacturing. She alerts that she took him to the reception room and Lion quickly follows down the mansion hallway to find out what went wrong. Highly worried about the mystery, the youth pushes open the reception room doors asking right away what had happened. To his total surprise, a powerful and dazzling magic light floods Lion's vision as soon as he opens the large room's door. The blonde comes face to face with several luxurious and glowing outfits displayed on the mannequins, looking like an actual imperial high couture shop. The youth is impressed by the clothes and wonders how the man brought all of that entirely alone, noticing that the pieces look flawless. Lion waves excited upon spotting Andri in the room and the tailor smiles relieved saying he was anxiously waiting for his arrival. The tailor proudly showcases the formal outfit and with much friendliness suggests that the young master try on the coat to see how it fits. The blonde puts on the elegant high couture coat and begins to adjust the detailed collars and sleeves that possess a beautiful golden embroidery. Lion looks in the mirror and is amazed by the system's 3-star outfit, which is classified as a rare masterpiece in the entire empire. Despite finding the clothing beautiful, Lion feels that something is still missing in the look, leaving the tailor worried about his reaction. The system alerts that the luxury outfit is incomplete and that Lion needs to discover the missing detail to reassure the tailor, looking at his own reflection in the mirror. The blonde youth suddenly realizes the mistake and alerts Andri that he discovered what is missing. The blonde says his neck area looks empty, leaving the tailor extremely excited to see that the master noticed the detail. The tailor explains that the outfit is perfect but needs a focal point at the neck. Like an elegant tie or a pocket square, Lion agrees with the technical observation and begins to analyze the best accessory choices that combo well with the gala clothes. He thinks to himself that his grandfather should wear an imposing classic tie, while Lixel would look great with a more youthful, refined bow tie. Andri capitalizes on the moment and, in a respectful way, asks a special favor of the blonde youth regarding the final touch on the clothes. The tailor asks if the young master would accept applying the final touches and doing the embroideries on his own noble family's outfits. Lion gets completely in shock over the sudden proposal and startled asks if the tailor is truly suggesting that Andri promises that he will teach everything that is required for making the tie to the embroideries, but Lion insists it would be disrespectful. The blonde argues that it would be a major disrespect on his part to alter in any way the flawless work of a master tailor. The tailor looks at him seriously and asks if there is a special reason for the youth to be reluctant to accept, even knowing that risk. Andri shares that when taking the patriarch's measurements he discovered that the young lady for whom he made clothes in the past was Lion's mother. He reveals that the elderly patriarch made it a point to personally thank him for the past services rendered to his late daughter. The tailor emotionally explains that at that moment he comprehended the sentimental importance that past gesture meant. Andri says that making clothes for those one loves is very important to Patrick and that the final touches must come from Lion's own hands. He argues that if the grandfather wove the fabric with so much love for his children, the completion must be done by the heir with the same affection. The man puts his hand on Lion's chest and guarantees that the youth's hands will bring a family feeling that no master tailor can copy. The tailor reflects that making good clothes involves much more than just technical sewing, being an important decision for him. Touched by Andri's sensitivity and generosity, Lion decides to accept the challenge and commits to giving the best of himself to the task. The blonde accepts the proposal and the tailor invites him to sit down and start deciding together what the best designs will be. The blonde youth sits at the table and excitedly alerts that in reality he already has an excellent design idea planned in his mind. Andri analyzes the sketches and approves the imposing design for the grandfather and the refined youthful look for Lixel, who will be the clan's successor. Next, the tailor asks what kind of style the young master plans to create for himself to wear at the grand gala party. Lion decides he will pick his look only after finishing his family members' clothes and accepts to start practicing with an ordinary tie. Andri explains in an educational way all the parts that make up a tie and emphasizes that every small detail demands maximum attention. Lion laughs, noticing that the names of the parts remind him of swords, and jokes saying it is better not to mention those names near his grandfather. The youth asks if they will use interfacing and the tailor praises the young man's sharp perception but explains it won't be necessary right now. The tailor explains they will use top-quality silk, which maintains its flawless shape when ironed, impressing young Lion. Andri gets completely excited and kicks off the practical sewing lesson with tons of energy and drive to teach the young master. Suddenly the system panel pops up in front of Lion with a warning, but the tailor's reaction at first leaves the blonde worried. The man tries to praise the result, but the tie turned out crooked due to Lion's lack of skill with the top-quality materials. Lion asks the tailor not to force the compliment and Andri suggests focusing on the embroideries, asking if the youth has already thought of some drawing. The heir draws the clan crest, explaining that the symbol of connected leaf branches represents the eternal union of his family. The tailor finds the meaning very deep and moving, agreeing that they must embroider the piece with that beautiful concept in mind. Andri teaches that texture is the most important part in embroidery so that the final drawing looks as natural and sophisticated as humanly possible. Lion realizes he will need plenty of practice, so he requests a 3-day deadline to finish all the necessary embroideries for the outfits. The tailor cracks a warm smile and firmly states that he totally believes in the youth's determination and talent. The blonde is relieved for not getting hurt much on the first day of training, but admits he started sewing like a madman at the table. He shares that he used all the practice patterns Andri left and even started creating and sketching his own tie designs. Lion avoided using the magic repair kit on purpose to guarantee that his manual skills improved in a natural and real way. The system alerts that the tie remains simple and with marks of his blood, making the tired youth consider dropping the training. Lion stretches wiped out in his sewing table chair, complaining of severe pains in his shoulders and eyes from focusing so much on the needle. He stares at the beautiful outfits laid out before him in the room and realizes the immense responsibility of completing those gala pieces. The youth decides he cannot give up now and feels that he is finally starting to catch the hang and the correct speed of the stitches. Suddenly the fabric in his hands begins to glow intensely with a golden light, leaving the heir confused by the reaction. The system alerts that his tailor talent finally awakened due to his tireless effort even while feeling so many pains. Very happy and excited with the achievement, Lion celebrates big time upon seeing that he officially reached apprentice tailor level. Feeling motivated, he begins to cut the fabrics with speed and agility, soon reaching level 2, proficiency in the system. The blonde irons the materials with mastery, unlocking achievements, earning gold coins and climbing to training level 3. Lion begins to reflect on the hidden requirements necessary to manage to awaken his item manufacturing talents. He realizes that the secret is the real and urgent need for the item, just like he stood in need of tools to harvest herbs previously. The youth remembers that his blacksmith talent awakened when he needed to create tools and the cooking one emerged upon needing oil. However, in sewing, the talent only awakened when he truly needed to complete the special clothes with his own bare hands. Satisfied with his discovery about the system, Lion decides to start the real work using his own manual skills. The youth cuts the fabric with precision and rejoices for not using the repair kit because now he manages to create excellent pieces entirely alone. He sews a high-quality tie and the system alerts that the item's value increased significantly. Thanks to his artisan touch, Lion celebrates the active artisan skill's success and decides that now is the ideal moment to apply the final embroidery on the silk piece. The tie glows intensely, transforming into a 3-star masterpiece with an extremely luxurious and flawless golden embroidery. The system praises the work of art made by an apprentice and the blonde places the beautiful tie on the suit that Andri prepared for his grandfather. The two pieces merge into a unique 4-star special set, leaving the heir radiant with joy over the result. The panel showcases the flawlessly completed luxury outfit, highlighting that it is a garment worthy of highly respected nobles in the empire. Lion is surprised to read that the complete set offers excellent additional physical and magical protection effects for the user. He sees that he completed the first part of the special tailor achievement and realizes he will easily wrap it up if he does the same for the others. With the clear goal in mind, the blonde begins to cut and sew the remaining materials with total calm, patience, and concentration. Quickly he completes Lixel's bow tie. Completing the second part of the tailoring achievement and activating the bonuses, Lion observes the ready outfits of his grandfather and younger brother and realizes that the true challenge now will be creating his own gala clothing. The blonde wants a striking style for the event, but one that does not compete for attention or repeat the exact same accessories used by Lixel, and Patrick Lion gets the excellent idea to create a short ribbon-style tie, which secures at the neck using a luxurious jewel right at the center. He sketches the new design in his notebook and defines that the main point of the entire gala accessory will be the precious stone placed right in the middle. The blonde goes to his grandfather's old jewelry chest to try to find some special precious stone that combos well with his suit. Upon opening the glowing chest filled with old luxury accessories, he spots a beautiful purple jewel that catches his attention immediately. Lion admires the precious stone with a smile, noticing that the glowing purple color is identical to the color of his family's signature eyes. He secures the beautiful jewel at the center of the ribbon and completes the sewing with mastery, making the accessory glow with an intense magical energy. The youth wraps up the Grand Tailor achievement and earns 15,000 gold coins for accomplishing a feat considered impossible for his level. The system further delivers an additional 10,000 gold coin bonus, leaving the blonde youth quite shocked by such generosity. With the accumulated coin balance, he finally manages to unlock and open the system's special shop to perform exclusive purchases. Very excited to spend his coins, Lion is interrupted from fear when his room door is pushed open with extreme force. Lyxl enters the room irritated and confronts his older brother for keeping on sewing, reminding him that the important gala ceremony is tomorrow. Lyxl crossly complains upon learning that his brother spent the last few nights awake and alerts that he is going to end up getting sick even before the ceremony. With a comically scary expression, the younger brother orders him to go to sleep immediately, leaving the blonde youth totally trembling from fear. Elvia agrees with the younger brother and, without wasting time, tosses Lion over her like a sack of potatoes to take him by force straight to bed. The blonde kicks unhappily because he heavily wanted to have the chance to look at the new additions in the coin shop he had just unlocked in the system. The morning of the next day finally arrives. Illuminating with splendor the imposing towers of the renowned Astri family's luxurious palace, Elvia accompanies Lion through the hallways and praises his appearance, commenting that the young master is incredibly elegant and handsome today. She highlights that the short tie made by the youth comboed very well with the gala suit, leaving the young blonde quite relieved. Lion, satisfied, thinks to himself that all the effort of sewing was worth it and remembers with amusement how the tailor, Andre, cried from emotion upon seeing the accessory. The maid observes him with a tender and subtle smile on her lips while they keep walking toward the grand gala party hall. The youth thoughtfully reflects before the window about how fast time passed since he reincarnated into the fragile body of the Astri firstborn Lixel, approaches down the hallway wearing his elegant purple gala suit and politely asks if his older brother managed to sleep well. Lion turns around surprised and asks if his younger brother was waiting for him, and the youth confirms it with a gesture of respect and fraternal affection. The younger one makes a bow and alerts that he will make it a point to escort his older brother during the official entrance into the imperial party hall. The servants open the massive double doors of the noble hall, revealing the start of a day that promises to be unforgettable for all of them there. Lixel excitedly whispers that his brother is the true protagonist of the day while both enter the immense hall packed with noble guests. The hall glows with luxury and elegance under the chandelier lights, accompanied by the smooth and pleasant sound of a talented classical orchestra. The noble guests comment impressed on how luxurious the decoration is, surpassing even the level of the imperial family's feasts. Others whisper that the family fight rumors were fake since the patriarch and grandson seem to be in perfect harmony at the grand event. Suddenly the voices go silent when the herald solemnly announces the imposing entrance of the Marquis Astri accompanied by his heirs. Patrick enters the noble hall with a firm and confident posture, followed closely by his young and very respected younger grandson. Lixel the public watches closely while the main heir and birthday boy of the day gives a slight and confident smile to everyone in the noble hall. The herald enthusiastically announces the grand protagonist of today's coming-of-age banquet, the young and very elegant heir, Leon Astri. Lion descends, imposing down the golden staircase under the attentive gazes and the powerful applause of admiration from all the nobility gathered at the location. Some nobles meanly gossip saying he does not look as incredible as the younger brother. Recalling his old reputation as an eccentric boy, Patrick approaches his grandson and calls his name firmly, and the youth politely answers, awaiting the elderly grandfather's words. The grandfather whispers, advising his grandson to ignore the gossip of those low-category nobles and focus only on his dignity as an Astri. The blonde youth smiles at the elderly man's care, but the patriarch huffs and coldly alerts that he must get ready to give a public speech. Soon Lion friendly asks his grandfather not to worry because he guarantees that he will never bring any type of shame to the family name. The youth thinks to himself that he has no interest in flatterers and focuses only on his main goal of making an excellent impression at the banquet. He kicks off his official speech thanking everyone's presence and introducing himself with elegance as Lion Asteri, who hits his coming of age. His family members watch him with pride while he speaks with clarity, focused only on elevating the good name and prestige of his entire clan. Lion wraps up thanking the heirs present who will lead the future of the empire, but notices a curious reaction coming from the noble public. Lixil notices his older brother and is impressed to see how he exudes a very confident and dignified aura during the entire formal speech. Some nobility ladies surprised whisper about how the blonde young heir's physical presence is catching their attention a lot today. Others agree that although the youth looks ordinary in the face, his gala clothing possesses an elegance and beauty totally out of the ordinary. They realize that the outfit's simplicity hides a genius luxury that elevates Lion's bearing, praising the youth's excellent fashion taste. The noble ladies' curious wonder who the brilliant designer responsible for tailoring such rare and striking clothes could be. Patrick observes the guests commenting well about the clothes and ironically admits to Lixil that the older brother knew how to use his head. Lixil wonders admired if his brother planned this whole positive clothing reaction beforehand, and the grandfather praises his grandson's intelligence. Lixil then finalizes the speech inviting everyone to enjoy the grand gala party and formally says goodbye to descend from the noble stage. The blonde heir wishes an excellent party night to everyone with a beautiful smile on his face. Being ovate by an immense round of applause, Lixil enthusiastically runs over to his brother and praises him with much admiration, stating that his speech before the nobility was incredible and dignified. The heir laughs and thanks the praise, but thinks to himself that the ease with formal speeches came from his years of office work back in Korea. Patrick approaches praising the clan's blood, saying that Lixil showcased the Asteri dignity even without possessing active mana or a strong aura. The grandfather gives a wide, proud smile, saying his grandson did a good job, and the blonde youth affectionately thanks the elderly patriarch. The elderly man suggests they also enjoy the banquet's abundant meal, and everyone follows very happy and united toward the reserved table. While the orchestra keeps playing a beautiful melody in the background, wonderful food items and fine sweets begin to be served to the nobility. Sitting at the noble balcony table, Patrick asks Lion if he has already decided what item he will take to perform the traditional labyrinth test. The blonde takes a sip of his drink and remembers he heard say that the item the participant takes defines the prize that will be won at the end of the test. He ponders that mages win magic tomes or staffs, but by lacking magic powers, his test's result is an unknown mystery. Thinking about the matter, Lion holds his glass and begins to say that he already knows what to take for the test. He reveals that he is planning to take the special potion he himself prepared into the labyrinth. Lixil listens to the answer and gets a bit thoughtful, saying he doesn't have much certainty regarding that choice. Lion explains that he will take one of his potions because he lacks talent for magic and does not yet possess any very high-ranking item. He remembers that even that 4-star clothing was made by Andre, leaving him to take the best item he produced entirely on his own. Patrick approves of Lion's decision and explains that the labyrinth will teach him the knowledge most suitable for his skills. The patriarch then looks at him seriously and says he has one more important question to ask Patrick, directly asks if Lion has an interest in politics or in becoming the official family heir. Lion answers right away that he has the least interest, leaving his grandfather surprised by such speed and conviction. He adds that he has always believed Lixil would be the family head, which leaves the younger brother deeply moved. Facing this sincere declaration from Lion, Patrick turns and calls for Lixil in a solemn way. The grandfather asks if he can protect his brother as if it were his own life, and Lixil swears from his heart by the family honor and by his mana. Seeing the youth's oath, the patriarch drinks his wine calmly and declares that the succession matter is totally resolved. Patrick gets extremely happy to resolve in such a fast way the succession problem that worried him the most in life. He feels a desire to brag, but remembers that the largest current threats to the clan are the imperial family and a famous house of swordsmen. The elderly man thinks that the imperial family is still fighting over its own succession, so they do not need to worry about them for the time being. To the patriarch, the true problem at the moment is the dangerous house of swordsmen called Videntis. Their terrifying succession rite wrapped up a short while ago, and they say a young girl carried the entire slaughter on her back to rebuild the family. He finds their methods but recognizes it is good to keep them busy, being better to avoid crossing the path of people that dangerous. Patrick understands Lion and supports him to live doing what he wants, but the young man wonders if he will cause problems in the future. The grandfather gives permission for him to do whatever he wants, but suddenly drops a but that leaves Lion pretty curious and apprehensive. Patrick warns with a scary look that he will not forgive him if he gets hurt, making the young man think that his grandfather would put an end to him before any accident could. Startled, Lion promises to take very good care of himself, and the grandfather approves the answer, calling everyone to finally finish the meal. Later on, in the party hall, Lion walks calmly holding his glass while observing the movement of the guests around. He looks far off and thinks that his grandfather's and Lixil's lives are pretty tough, since dealing with so many flattering nobles demands plenty of patience. At the same time, the blonde youth knows very well that he also has an important role to fulfill during the grand gala event. Even to accomplish his job, Lion is suddenly approached by a female guest who greets him in a very polite way. The lady asks who designed those wonderful clothes, and Lion internally celebrates for securing his first client right after. Other noble women quickly approach saying they are also very anxious to discover the identity of the talented designer. Lion is surprised to see that much more people than expected appeared interested in knowing who was responsible for his clothes. However, one of the nobles present comments that there exists a worrying detail in this entire story that leaves him hesitant. The man reveals that the tailor is the illegitimate son of a noble clan and ended up being expelled for selling outfits to ordinary people from the peasantry, too. One of the ladies finds it an absurdity to reject the tailor for that, but the noble says that the first prince's allies care a lot about those rules. Lion remembers that the second prince was born out of wedlock and realizes Andri became a victim of political prejudices. Lion says he can introduce him anyway if it is no trouble, and the group excitedly answers that they only care about the clothes' extreme quality. With a gentle smile, Lion says it would be a major lack of manners to hide the designer's name in front of so much interest from the public present. Upon revealing that Andri is under the protection of the Astri house, the nobility is surprised to learn the talented designer's whereabouts. He alerts that those interested need to hurry because only 3 spots remain available in the tailor's disputed schedule today. While the gossip spreads, a woman with silver hair observes the scene in silence and decides it is time to act. She walks elegantly through the party hall toward the blonde young heir, focused on managing to talk to him about the tailor. The imposing Clarencia Videntis, head of the House of Swordsmen, asks if the designer truly accepts orders for any type of clothing. The guests begin to whisper curious about what she would order, while Lion Formal greets her with much respect and politeness. Heavily surprised by the feared swordswoman's interest, Lion asks with all the politeness in the world what type of clothing she would like to order. Clarencia says in a direct way that she desires to order durable training clothes and also comfortable outfits for her daily use. The nobles around enter instant panic when she begins to talk about the old garments she used to utilize, with an unsettlingly cold gaze. She says her old clothes got totally destroyed and can no longer be used by any means. Faced with the feared warrior leader's scary presence, the other nobles make up rushed excuses and flee terrified from there. In a matter of seconds, the location empties out completely, leaving only Lion and the feared woman standing in the middle of the hall in absolute silence, although he understands the public's dread of the bloodright survivor. Lion thinks to himself that a client is a client and resolves not to care about the rumors. Lion activates salesman mode and alerts that complex orders take time, but the swordswoman does not mind and asks if she should pay a down payment. Clarencia alerts that she will arrange the payment details separately as soon as the party wraps up. Lion is relieved to see that the chat ended in a much easier way than he expected, thinking about the next step. Right after, he announces that all reservation spots are finished and asks if anyone else would like to join the waiting list. With that, a flood of orders and letters from anxious clients begins to arrive quickly, guaranteeing the business plan's total success. Lion looks at the thick registry book filled with orders and celebrates that the tailor Andri will certainly be very happy with the result. The housekeeper alerts that the patriarch announced that the labyrinth test is already ready, and Lion answers that he will go immediately out there. The blonde young youth walks with firm steps until stopping before the immense and imposing golden gates that lead to the legendary labyrinth. Kyle approaches and comments in a teasing tone that he expects a grand demonstration of magic from the oldest grandson of the famous Astri family. The first prince, Terrace, asks in an ironic way if the young heir is not feeling even a little bit nervous with the grand test. Lion knows the prince is teasing because he lacks magic, but answers with a calm smile that he is not nervous by any means. Suddenly, Lixil appears in defense of Lion and sharply questions for what reason his beloved brother should have motives to be nervous. Upon seeing the younger brother's intimidating posture, Lion thinks to himself that he truly looks a lot like their angry grandfather and acts in a totally opposite way with him. Kyle steps away bothered while Lion reflects that the spoiled heir focused only on luxury is exactly the type of person Lixil detests. Lixil delivers the special potion to Lion and affectionately asks him to take care. Receiving a warm thank you back from his brother Lion, adjusts his travel bag straps in a very determined way and gets ready to finally kick off his grand journey into the labyrinth. The place brings back memories of his childhood when he used to hide in the immense library to escape his lack of magic talent. He remembers that the first patriarch hid a mysterious treasure after the war against the demons and gets curious to discover what it could be. The housekeeper approaches and delivers a Yao, glowing object on top of a pillow, making the young master say thank you for the valuable item received. Next, he lightly pricks his own finger to drip a drop of blood on the floor, activating the sealing mechanism of the ancient location. In the same instant, a gigantic blue magic circle of highly elevated complexity begins to glow intensely under the young heir's feet. Kyle goes into shock upon realizing that just the act of opening the labyrinth gates is already enough to cause a massive earthquake in the castle. The gigantic and heavy iron doors of the temple begin to open slowly, releasing a continuous torrent of pure magical energy. Lion gets very startled when the powerful currents of mystical wind begin to circulate in a chaotic way all around his body. An intense invisible force pulls him into the darkness of the labyrinth while the entrance portal closes right behind. That is the book Labyrinth, a living location that punishes the greedy by transforming everything into an inescapable prison to trap invaders. However, a grand tremor begins to shake the mansion's structures, startling all the nobles who kept hanging out in the party hall. Kyle shouts startled, asking what is going on, while Terrace tries to calm the crowd, asking for everyone to take very good care. Lion notices that something is terribly wrong and questions himself if the labyrinth portal was supposed to open that way. The youth enters total panic without comprehending what in fact is going on around him while a black smoke suddenly emerges. He keeps falling into an endless abyss wrapped by a strange and dense dark energy that completely blocks his line of sight. Outside, Lixil runs desperately shouting for his grandfather upon seeing that his older brother's passage simply fled out of control. Suddenly, Lion's body floats in a beautiful spatial rift filled with stars and his system notifies that a secret achievement was unlocked. He wins authorization to read all books, an intelligence and maximum mana bonus, besides forming a pure mana circle in his chest. Meanwhile, shouts of panic take over the main banquet hall when the location begins to collapse due to the powerful shake. The nobles run desperately knocking down tables and wine glasses on the floor while begging for help and desperately searching for the marquee. A massive and heavy crystal chandelier detaches from the high ceiling, plunging straight toward the people who were standing in the middle of the hall. One of the female guests points upward totally horrified and shouts in despair alerting that the giant luster is plunging. At the last second, a brilliant and powerful barrier of golden energy materializes in the air and blocks the chandelier's deadly impact. The guests realize they escaped death and begin to celebrate upon noticing that was Patrick Astrey's iconic protection barrier. The large, glowing barriers cover the entire mansion, proving to the relieved guests that the Patriarch is already acting to save them. The imposing Patriarch Patrick concentrates his immense magic strength to maintain the defense spell active and guarantee everyone's safety. Patrick firmly orders the guard Rixon to go to the banquet hall to guide and guarantee the safe evacuation of all guests. Lixil arrives running very worried about the situation and calls for his grandfather to understand the gravity of what just happened in the labyrinth. Lixil asks what in fact is going on, and Patrick answers serious that the library broke out of control and he already ordered the evacuation of the location. The Patriarch questions with a pretty worried face regarding the current safety situation of the Imperial princes in the hall. Taurus answers that they are perfectly safe because young Lixil acted fast and conjured a powerful protection shield over both. Upon hearing the good news, Patrick shows himself quite relieved and offers thanks for knowing that all the important people in the hall are safe. Next, he instructs Lixil to send healers to care for potential wounded and prepare a comfortable rest area for the nobles. The elderly man alerts that he will stay guarding the labyrinth entrance and will leave the remaining tasks under his command. Leaving the younger grandson in shock, Lixil tries to protest saying the location is way too dangerous and that he would like to stay to help, but his grandfather firmly denies the offer right away. Patrick reminds his grandson that he needs to fulfill his duty as the next official head of the mage clan. Taurus alerts about the danger, but Patrick laughs and ironically answers that he did not know the Imperial guests cared this much about him. Patrick firmly orders Lixil to leave there already, leaving the younger youth quite reluctant and with a squeezed heart. Taurus agrees and comforts Lixil saying that Lion will certainly be fine, while the second prince, Kyle, offers to help too. Even while stepping away, Lixil cannot stop thinking about his older brother with much worry faced with the labyrinth's severe death control. The Patriarch silently observes the princes and his younger grandson leaving the destroyed hall heading toward the external safe zone. Patrick thinks to himself that the labyrinth is way too unstable and that he could not risk Lixil's life in case something went wrong in that blood ritual. Suddenly footsteps echo through the hall and someone questions if he will truly keep standing there in front of such a severe emergency. It is Clarencia, the leader of the Videntis house, and the Patriarch, intrigued, asks for what reason she decided to stay instead of fleeing from there. The warrior calmly says, the Marquis seems to be totally sure that the blonde young heir remains alive inside that place. She adds that the elderly man acts as if he already knew exactly what the final outcome of the entire test will be, leaving him thoughtful in silence. To Patrick's total surprise, Clarencia states that she decided to stay at the location to provide all necessary help in rescuing the youth. He questions the motive for that, arguing that her own family would benefit much more in case she decided to provide zero help to the clan. Clarencia simply explains that she already ordered her new clothes from the young man and that she deeply detests when her plans go wrong. She turns and alerts that she will keep nearby awaiting on standby in case some new emergency occurs at the labyrinth gates. While Clarencia observes, the housekeeper Elvia suddenly emerges from the gloomy shadows right beside the elderly patriarch. Elvia comments that that young warrior possesses an incredible perception, and the elderly man fully agrees with his ally's observation. Patrick orders Elvia to conjure a powerful concealment barrier all around the labyrinth entrance, and she promptly obeys. The patriarch seriously states that zero information about the library's desk control can leak by any means to the outside world. He pulls out his magic watch and alerts that he will start to restore the entire external facade of the temple to maintain the party's normal appearances. With that, he hopes they manage to at least open a small escape passage so that Lion manages to exit the labyrinth in safety, in a totally opposite reality. A beautiful flowery field under the sunny sky emerges with a smooth music being hummed. A butterfly lands delicately on a flower, while the blonde young heir quietly rests lying in the middle of the immense grass. He gets perplexed and thinks that that situation is insane, since the achievement notification indicates that he beat the entire book labyrinth holding a glowing plaque. Lion confused admits that he has not the least clue what in fact he did to manage to beat that magic test. He sits up on the grass and begins to pull from his memory to try to remember how that same stage used to work in the original game. The youth deduces that that beautiful field is the reward room and that by having concluded the test, the location must be totally safe for him. Faced with the screen that asks if he wants to undo the illusion, he remembers that in the game it was enough to click on yes, questioning himself about what to do. He ponders that the original Lion entered and exited from there without problems, suspecting that the unique real change now is the presence of his mana. Soon he realizes that that makes no sense, because if the secret were just mana, any other mage from his family would have easy access to the treasure. A brand new and shocking theory emerges in his mind, making the youth wonder if all of this has a direct relationship to the fact of being in that body. He remembers that his grandfather kept the treasure there 50 years ago, right after wrapping up the grand war against the demons alongside the legendary hero Lion, recalls that the hero mysteriously disappeared without leaving traces after the end of the conflict, which makes him reflect on this mystery. The labyrinth resolved itself as soon as he entered, suggesting that the system perhaps does not recognize him as Lion, but rather as another person. He remembers that the war is the game scenario where players assume precisely the role of the legendary hero to save that entire world. In case the hidden treasure belonged in fact to the hero, Lion realizes that that secret item can be simply the equipment from his account. Thinking about that crazy possibility, he knows that the war era against the demons is exactly the historical period in which the game takes place. If the item kept by his grandfather truly was the game hero's, it could only be a legendary piece of gear from his own main avatar that would explain perfectly the reason why the game system identifies his action as the simple recovery of an object from his inventory. However, the blonde young heir knows he cannot stay standing there forever and needs to find a way to physically force his own exit. He walks through the flowery field confident that even with his low power level, he will certainly manage to find an escape route from that location. Suddenly, his foot lightly bumps into something while he walks through the grass, making the young heir stop to look with attention at the ground. Upon analyzing a rare white flower, Lion notices that it possesses a description in the system and seems to have been planted in a very specific pattern. He looks around and notices that the entire map possesses rare yellow and purple flowers that were also positioned following a very rigid rule. Since only a single flower species should grow per region, seeing all of them mixed in a single place lights up a large alert sign in his mind. The blonde young youth concludes that that entire region was subdivided on purpose and the plants were all sown in a totally artificial way. He deduces that in the region where the flowers disrespect natural laws, there must be a crucial clue to help him escape that location for good. He runs through the field in search of a specific point where the incompatible plants are grouped in a totally irregular way in the landscape. He enters a dark area, closes his eyes, and concentrates deeply, focused only on the rhythmic sound of his own heartbeats. By guiding his mind through the cardiac rhythm, he accesses his own body and fascinated discovers the wonderful glowing structure of his mana circle. The system successfully confirms the detection of the mana circle and releases access to check all data and details of this power. Lion takes a deep breath, focuses his mind, and tries to channel his magic energy to make the mana flow totally visible to his eyes. Upon using mana, the expert eye skill is temporarily enhanced, with a time limit of 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Upon looking at the field, Lion takes a fright upon seeing magic traps and realizes that that huddle of plants was in fact an ambush. He concludes that messing there would activate a terrifying magic and decides to search for the exit in another part of the field because the clue is not there. The blonde young youth maintains his calm and decides that he needs to keep walking a bit more to find the labyrinth's true secret. He advances with determination while a smooth and brilliant stream of petals and mystical wind wraps him from all sides of the scenery. Suddenly, the ground shakes under his feet and a distorted system screen filled with flaws and noise emerges right before Lion's eyes. The enhanced version of his analysis technique reveals the hidden name of that region and the youth celebrates upon noticing that he finally found the exit. The system indicates that out there is the source of the illusory mana thread, making Lion wonder if he will need to dig the soil to find it. He realizes he needs a tool to cut this thread and decides to open the system's shop to see if he finds some useful item. The shop opens completely due to the youth's balance and shows several curious choices, like a pair of sharp scissors and an old key. He notices a brand new tab called Survival in the coin shop and decides to kick off his search there since it is the category he stands most in need of. However, upon seeing bizarre items like an ejection chair and a millionaire key, Lion gets frustrated and thinks all of that is a scam. He complains about the absurd prices and asks if the shop possesses an intelligent filter to display only the products compatible with his balance. To his grand joy, a system confirmation screen emerges asking if he in fact would like to apply the suggested filter. Lion asks to see cheap items with a discount and the system initiates the loading of products organized by ascending order of price. He praises the readability of the new filtered list but soon realizes that many of the cheap items do not serve the current moment. Out of all the choices shown, a magic detector and a pair of sharp scissors catch his attention a lot as the best picks. Since the magic detector is way too expensive for his budget, he concludes that the sharp scissors are the best tool to use at the moment. Without hesitating another single second, the young heir firmly clicks on the system's purchase button to guarantee his tool. The system confirms the purchase of the sharp scissors and Lion comments laughing that all the saved coins vanished in the blink of an eye. He stays happy that the object now belongs to him in a permanent way and roots hard that the tool resolves his problem soon. With the scissors in hand, he gets ready to cut the source of the mysterious and brilliant mystical energy flow that floats around him. He begins to dig the soil quickly and jokes that all his arduous daily harvest work made the task of digging something very easy. Lion demonstrates an impressive agility with his small shovel, pulling up kilograms of dirt and grass in a few seconds of physical effort. The system issues an alert warning that only 1 minute remains for the special enhancement of his analysis technique to definitively expire. Lion is shocked to see time pass so fast and desperately accelerates his movements to manage to finish everything before the end of the deadline. Suddenly his shovel hits a solid and resistant object hidden under the dirt, making the youth shout from happiness upon finding it. He hurries to move the dirt rubble with his own bare hands to try to rescue the mysterious object as fast as possible from that hole. He pulls out a beautiful blue and golden mystical chest and celebrates that the object is identical to the valuable reward chest from his old journey in the game. The system initiates a 10-second countdown and Lion runs to cut the mana threads with his new sharp scissors. He performs a fast and precise cut right in the middle of the mystical energy beam, causing the entire magic flow to begin dissipating into the air. The chest begins to levitate and glow in a radiant way in the air at the exact moment that the enhancement of his special skill wraps up for good. The system screen appears asking if he desires to claim that grand final reward and the youth accepts right away with enthusiasm. The system stores the reward in his inventory and Lion smiles, reading that the mystical object was again linked to his personal account. While he tries to guess what he won, a message alerts about the forced start of an unforgettable story mode, leaving him surprised. Startled, the youth does not comprehend what that memory mode is and desperately wonders about what will happen to him from then on. In parallel to that, at the clan's imposing mansion, the patriarch and young Lixel gather with the noble ministers before the temple entrance. Patrick asks if the damage control was done and Lixel confirms saying they disguised all the mansion's mess as if it were an earthquake. He adds that they secured the support of both imperial princes and also the master swordswoman of the Videntis family to shut down the gossip. Patrick murmurs, relieved that the noble rumors will cease and ironically comments about how grand incompetence of the first prince was useful. Today Licht asks about the church and the underworld and Lixel answers calm that he acted fast to guarantee that no one knows his brother's whereabouts. Patrick praises his grandson's good work and seriously alerts that zero secret information must reach the ears of those two rival factions. The first faction is the influential temple of the obsessive archbishop, who usually investigates to the deep any mystery linked to the grand hero's legend. The second secret faction is the underworld, an immense dark powerhouse that was created in the past by the hero's old battle comrades. Both factions have grand spies and in case they discover the desk control, could quickly notice that Lion possesses a rare hidden skill. The elderly patriarch knows very well in his heart that his oldest grandson, Lion, in some mysterious way, has a strong link to the hero. He ponders that the first proof of that was the hero's potion that Lion used and the second was the temple's desk control as soon as he stepped inside there. Patrick pensive concludes that there certainly exists a grand and dangerous mystery about the young man of which not even Lion himself has consciousness. Patrick firmly alerts that information must be kept in absolute secret until they discover in fact what is going on. Suddenly a powerful tremor begins to shake the location and the Marquis shouts startled upon realizing that the entire labyrinth is moving. Patrick orders everyone to get ready for the worst while Lixel is impressed to feel an immense amount of power coming from deep inside there. A glowing whirlpool of purple and white mystical energy emerges in the entrance portal indicating that something very powerful is about to exit from there. Repentantly a folded paper flies at high speed from inside the light portal and hits square in the face of the startled patriarch. While Patrick trembles from anger in the background over the surprise hit, Lixel picks up the paper and confused notices that it is a written message. The younger grandson examines the folded note in a curious way in his hands and tries to understand how that ended up there in the middle of so much magic. Upon unfolding the paper slowly, Lixel's face shifts completely upon recognizing the handwriting contained in that mysterious correspondence. He notices that the note was written in a massive hurry but recognizes right away Lion's handwriting and stays relieved to see there are 0 blood marks. Still recovering from the hit on his face, Patrick asks with much seriousness and urgency about what in fact is written on the paper. Lixel swallows hard in an apprehensive way and begins to read the note's content to his grandfather with a pretty worried and confused face. Meanwhile, over in the book Labyrinth, Lion's system formally confirms the start of the legendary hero's mysterious story mode, feeling a powerful headache. Lion tries to stand up while the system prepares the display of the video containing the secret memories. The video begins to run and he realizes that that scene is an old memory from the day his grandfather personally met the hero. In the video, the hero delivers a small mysterious chest saying the item is no longer useful and asks Patrick to care for it with his own life. Lion is shocked to see his young grandfather and understands that that is the exact recording of the day Patrick received the mystical treasure from the hero's hands. The recording gets its audio cut, irritating Lion for not managing to hear besides blaming himself for not remembering the look he created for the hero. In the mystical scene, young Patrick accepts the mission to guard the secret chest with total safety, promising to protect it from any threat right after. The system notifies that he finished watching the recorded memory and initiates the automatic exit process from story mode. The young youth wakes up back on the cold floor of the destroyed library and complains heavily for thinking the video wrapped up way too fast. He stays with a strange feeling that that scene was crucial but realizes he obtained very little useful information from that memory. Lion deduces that the conversation took place right in the middle of the war against the demons when the group trusted the mysterious treasure to his grandfather. For the future, he opens the chest and finds the hero's treasure, a legendary set of accessories capable of completely concealing all of the user's information. He remembers that the item was common in the game and highly coveted by players just for granting an excellent passive extra experience bonus. Either way, he puts on the mystical bracelets and celebrates big time because the power to conceal his mana came right at the moment he stood most in need of it. He decides to close his eyes and clicks on the system option to finally analyze in detail the information regarding his new pure mana circle. Although the system accuses little remaining energy, Lion is shocked to see the absurd storage capacity that his first circle possesses. He remembers that ordinary mages need to meditate for years on end just to expand their mana capacity a bit and reach new circles. The young youth intrigued questions himself about the reason why his first, simple circle possesses such a colossal and absurd internal structure. Thinking well, he resolves not to break his head over this mystery, joyfully concluding that having more mystical power is always a grand advantage. With the new accessories concealing his mystical power, he celebrates the grand success of his coming-of-age journey without running the risk of getting caught. However, the blonde young heir soon undoes his beautiful smile upon coming face to face with a brand new and very complicated logistics issue at the moment. The grand problem now is that he still remains completely trapped in the middle of that dangerous and mysterious labyrinth's destroyed ruins. The youth wonders if he should start walking through the book rubble to try to locate some potential loophole or secret exit from there. Suddenly, the system accuses access denied without permission from the location's master, revealing right after that, the current owner is Lion himself. He realizes he turned into the master by having beaten the test, but gets quite worried upon noticing that this direction was not part of his original plans. The system alerts that the entrance is broken and under automatic repair, leaving Lion tense with the immense mess in which that ancient location finds itself. He imagines his angry grandfather delivering a terrifying scolding for the disaster he caused in the historical temple and gets desperate to find a way to avoid that. At the last second, Lion gets a grand idea and questions himself if by being the local's new master, he wouldn't also be capable of restoring everything entirely alone. The option to reset the map would make all the treasures and rare books vanish, causing the youth to discard that idea right away. Lion seeks another alternative, and the system offers the manual structure restoration choice, although it alerts that the process will take some time. Thinking of the proposal as an edit to a game save file, he decides to roll back the local state to the point it was at 1 week ago. He schedules the restoration excluding his items, but the system alerts that the repair process will prevent him from exiting from there for about 672 hours. Lion does the math quickly in his mind and shouts totally horrified upon realizing that that time equates to spending an entire month locked in there. The youth asks if he can move freely through the local ruins during that time, and the system confirms that the master possesses free transit through the map. Lion discovers an unused book return chute and celebrates upon noticing that he can use to send a note alerting his family. With his plan mapped out and the note already sent out of the portal, the blonde heir gives a slight and confident smile that everything will work out in the end. The youth gives the final order to the system, which activates a gigantic green magic circle to kick off the complex manual repairs of the entire structure. In the same instant, the magic energy wraps around the entire library, moving the books and the broken shelves back to their correct positions. With the timer initiating the 1-month countdown, Lion asks the system to transport him directly to the final and deepest area of the map. Lion emerges amidst a light portal in the new scenery and comments quite impressed about how that teletransport feature is useful. He reflects that now he just needs to find a way to survive inside there for an entire month and begins to plan his next steps. To his total amazement, the youth comes face to face with an immense and brilliant lake of crystal clear waters right in the middle of that labyrinth area. He is impressed by the lake's size inside the labyrinth and stays relieved to notice that the location seems to be totally safe and calm. The system displays very complex scientific terms about the fish there, causing the youth to request a slightly simpler explanation. The system explains that there are several edible fish and that only a single extremely rare and valuable specimen inhabits those waters. The system screen alerts him that fishing in the lake has just been successfully unlocked due to his authority as the labyrinth master. Although fishing is open, he remembers he doesn't have a rod, but quickly recalls that he bought a useful item in the coin shop. In the next moment, his new fishing line's bobber already floats quietly under the calm and brilliant waters of that immense lake. He offers thanks for finding the fishing gear in the system shop, although he laughing admits that the complete kit cost a pretty penny. Lion confesses he would eat even the bait so as not to die of hunger, but gets happy to manage to catch a few small fish for his dinner. The blonde young heir relaxes in his camping chair, relieved to know that he certainly won't run the risk of starving out there. Repentantly, his rod's bobber is pulled down with a lot of strength all at once, causing the youth to let out a large shout of fright. He holds the rod with firmness and immediately notices that that mysterious fish is immensely stronger than all the others. He caught Lion as impressed to see his fishing rod bend almost completely due to the animal's incredible pulling strength underwater. He realizes that that is no ordinary prey and begins to reel in the line very slowly to avoid that the strong mystical cord ends up snapping. Without any rush and with plenty of caution, the blonde young youth keeps wearing out the giant fish to guarantee his fishing's total success. With a powerful final tug, he manages to pull out of the water a huge 2-star labyrinth purple carp and celebrates the victory big time, holding the giant carp with both hands. Lion is amazed to read in the system that that mystical fish perfectly serves as food. He comments very excited about the incredible physical sensation of hooking that prey and comes to understand for what reason people love fishing. The system congratulates the youth for the feat, revealing that he just awakened the fishing talent and has already climbed straight to apprentice level. Lion stores the fish and plans to eat it at dinner, thinking that the carp's nutritional properties will be great to strengthen his fragile body. He looks around and decides that before any other task, the most important thing now is to set up a good space to assemble his kitchen. Out of nowhere, a wooden table, chef knives, metal pans, and various seasonings begin to emerge magically from his inventory on the ground. He remembers he carried the things in case Lixel got sick in the forest, but offers thanks that they are being useful to him, deciding to pull out the cauldron. Upon opening his inventory screen, the long blonde-haired youth comes face to face with a strange mysterious object that catches his attention. It is a free magic flintstone item that serves to light campfires with much ease, and Lion celebrates the fine freebie with just a light touch from the young man. The mystical stone emits brilliant sparks and lights a beautiful and powerful golden fire flame over the wood. He observes the campfire crackle by the lake's edge and satisfied comments about how the fire's heat brings a comforting camping sensation. With everything ready around, the young blonde positions himself before the cutting table and decides that finally the time has come to prepare the giant carp. Holding the mystical fish with firmness on the board, he kicks off the process, performing a very precise cut with his sharp kitchen knife. He pulls out the carp's innards, and the system notifies that the organs do not serve to eat, but are excellent for alchemy experiments. Lion gets quite excited upon discovering that he will manage to use the animal's innards to prepare useful potions and perform his alchemies without losing time. The blonde youth tosses all the carp's innards straight inside his large alchemy cauldron, positioned by his side. The cauldron begins to bubble and glow in pink entirely on its own as soon as it receives the innards, leaving the youth quite impressed with the practicality. He begins to assemble varied skewers with fish and vegetables, joyfully commenting that any food gets way more tasty on a skewer. Lion detailedly explains that the secret is to roast the fish with the head turned downward to maintain all the meat's juiciness and flavor. He guarantees that this infallible preparation technique leaves the fish with a very crispy skin on the outside and extremely soft on the inside. With the skewers properly positioned around the campfire's heat, the primitive roasted carp begins to brown slowly, exhaling smoke. While awaiting the meat to roast, the youth decides to take advantage of the free time to start arranging his space to sleep under the tree. Lion begins to clear a few rocks from the ground to level the terrain and grumbles a bit about the tiring work that assembling a campsite is. Despite the necessary effort, he smiles excited thinking that that is a unique opportunity in life to experience such a beautiful campsite. The final result of his effort turns out simply fantastic. With a beautiful tent assembled under the canopy of the immense tree, at sunset Lion observes the orange late afternoon sky with a wide smile on his face, thinking that dinner and rest time fit perfectly together. With a hungry look and with much water in his mouth, the youth grabs the golden carp skewer and gets ready to take his first and delicious bite. The system displays the information for the 1-star roasted carp, indicating that the meal quenches hunger and gives a small chance to score something special. Lion notices an unprecedented warning that the food cannot be taken outside, understanding that he will only manage to consume those mystical delicacies inside there. Without caring about the details of the system rules, the blonde youth takes an immense and delicious bite of the roasted meat and lets out a groan of pleasure. He notices that the oils left the skin incredibly golden and crispy, while the white meat on the inside falls apart from being so soft and juicy. The youth savors every piece and thinks to himself that that rich and smoky aroma is simply the best thing he has ever eaten in his entire life in that world. Lion cries from emotion upon savoring the fish, saying that that wonderful flavor immediately begs for a bowl of white rice with kimchi. He comments that the fish lacks any muddy smell or bones, being so tasty that it makes you want to share that flavor with another person. Suddenly, the system notifies that eating the roasted carp increased his maximum mana, leaving the young blonde completely shocked and surprised. Lion stands up, startled from his chair at the campfire's edge. Unable to believe what the system warning screen is displaying to him, he realizes that his total mana capacity truly increased and wonders if it is actually possible to expand this power just by eating food. He reflects that the mages outside would empty out the lake if they found out about this, and begins to question himself if this effect would also work on Lixil. Thinking of his younger brother's well-being, the young blonde decides that he will certainly need to cook one of these fish for him in the future. He approaches his large alchemy cauldron and decides it is time to check the result of his experiment with the carp's innards. Lion sees a massive glowing pearl and reads that it is the labyrinth carp essence, an item that permanently increases mana recovery. Amazed while holding the glowing sphere in his hands, he celebrates that that is the first time seeing a valuable expert-tier item. Lion stays in silence for a few moments observing the rare jewel until a wide and mischievous smile begins to design itself on his face. Although he feels much curiosity, he decides to store the valuable mystical item in his inventory for now so he can focus on his other tasks. He opens his collected items tab and stays satisfied to see that he managed to gather an immense variety of rare herbs through the forest. On top of that, the labyrinth is packed with fresh ingredients filled with mana and there is absolutely zero people nearby out there to get in his way. With a very joyful and winning face, the long blonde-haired youth concludes that that location, from a technical standpoint, is flawless. He realizes that that secret labyrinth area works as his own exclusive hunting field to quickly level up. Lion rubs his hands, very excited upon realizing that there are way more valuable resources for him to loot and explore inside there than he imagined. However, he remembers that before starting any grand looting plan, the most important thing of all is to finish eating his roasted carp. Days later, in his labyrinth survival, Lion celebrates big time upon managing to fish 3 giant crawfish with his mystical net in the lake. Holding the mystical aquatic creatures with a beautiful smile on his face, the youth joyfully wonders if he is just having massive luck today. He stores the crawfish and plans to use the remaining wheat flour to prepare a delicious and very hot dough soup for his dinner. Walking barefooted through the soft grass, Lion joyfully hums upon realizing that he is getting used in a very fast way to that routine. He shares that every morning he collects the previous night's fishing traps and then goes to verify how the growth of his forest plantation is doing. He looks closely at the soil and stays satisfied to notice that his banana sweet potatoes are growing very strong and healthy. Lion concludes that the harvest is flawless and decides to focus his energies on gathering new resources and ingredients. Through the forest today, he goes along gathering several interesting mystical species along the way like labyrinth mushrooms, wild peppers, and exotic flowers. Lion harvests a beautiful yellow and white flower, finding the species very pretty due to being his first time seeing a specimen of that mystical plant. He thinks about planting a few of the flowers near his tent but suddenly takes a massive fright upon reading the system information about it. The youth stays in shock and blinks his eyes multiple times upon noticing that the ordinary-looking mystical flower possesses a sale price of 300 coins in the system. With a completely incredulous and very hyped look, Lion shouts surprised upon realizing that that common flower can be sold for hard cash. Lion is surprised to see this brand new system message and wonders if the shilling shop doubles as a currency exchange. He asks if he can sell the flower on the spot but the system informs him that the offer is 250 shillings, including the sales fee. Lion gets upset and asks why the value dropped so much in just a few seconds, questioning if the system is trying to rip him off. The system explains that it performs real-time evaluations because it is a low-tier common flower, making the MC realize that the bargaining game has officially begun. He figures he needs to actively negotiate if he wants to get a fair price of at least 1 star for his items. The young man clears his throat to get the floating screen's attention, getting ready to put his silver tongue to work against the system. Lion starts arguing that the dried flower makes an incredible health tea and could easily count as an alchemy ingredient. He insists that the flower should be worth way more since it is accessible and easy to brew, claiming the current offer is well below expectations. The system emits a chime and agrees with the MC's logic, instantly starting to adjust the item's selling price. Seeing that the price only bumped up to 280 shillings fee included, Lion complains that the system is being way too stingy. The young man sighs, saying there is no point in arguing if that is a hard platform rule, but a sudden new alert catches his attention. The shop decides to make an exception, waiving the fee and offering the full 300 shillings, showing the MC that big profits are totally possible here. With a sneaky grin, the young man accepts the deal, resolving to study his books hard so he never gets lowballed again. The transaction finishes successfully and the daisy vanishes into thin air as the system collects the items sold for 300 shillings. Lion holds the small pouch of coins that spawns in his hand, celebrating the instant payout he just received. He asks if he can also sell processed goods, and the system confirms he can, even though he does not have any in his inventory right now. Knowing that defective or knockoff goods are strictly rejected, the MC understands he must craft everything flawlessly and keep items in mint condition. Pleased with all his discoveries so far, the young man remarks to himself that today turned out to be wildly productive. After gathering various ingredients throughout the forest, Lion stretches happily and decides it is finally time to grab a bite. He sets up the campsite table with pots and lays out the vegetables next to the massive blue crawfish he caught to start cooking. The system screen describes the spicy maize seed, warning about its powerful aroma and fiery flavor that can literally bring tears to your eyes. Lion examines the red seed in his hand and gets excited, realizing it is the perfect peppercorn for his recipe. The young man tosses the seeds into the boiling water and adds the cleaned crawfish head and claws to create a rich, flavorful broth. While the broth boils, he prepares a firm dough, slapping it on the board to give it the right texture and lets the mushrooms simmer slowly. Next, he adds the cleaned body of the crawfish straight into the pot, cheering that the seafood soup is almost ready. The mouth-watering aroma rising from the boiling broth makes the young heir's mouth water even more as he watches it cook. He tears the rested dough into thin bites to drop into the soup, finishing off with the maize daisies to boil everything together. The finished dish turns out to be a 2-star seafood dough soup, classified by the system as a true culinary masterpiece. Lion scoops up a big spoon of that steaming soup and decides to start his meal by tasting the broth first. He is blown away by the flavor, happily noting that the hot broth is perfect for cleansing the palate and cutting through the richness. The young man praises the perfect texture of the dough in his mouth, highlighting how the mushrooms and daisies bring a delicious crunch to the dish. He feels the rich umami flavor spread completely, thinking that these familiar, home-cooked flavors are truly the most irresistible. The most anticipated moment of the meal arrives, and the MC focuses his eyes on the juicy piece of crawfish meat he picked up with his spoon. He is completely shocked by the tender, lobster-like texture and the sweetness of the meat that rivals a real blue crab. With his hand over his mouth in utter surprise, the young man realizes the crawfish was the true secret weapon behind such an incredible broth. He keeps eating non-stop, switching between a tasty bite of crawfish and a spoonful of soft dough soup. The young man takes a sip of broth to soothe his throat and eats the flowers to reset his palate whenever the dish feels too rich. Lion savor every single bite, happily thinking he could eat this delicious seafood soup forever if he could. After emptying the entire pot, the young man leans back comfortably in his chair and lets out a burp of pure satisfaction from the amazing meal. Lion closes his eyes and enjoys the gentle breeze under the shade of the maize trees, feeling that heavy post-lunch drowsiness set in. He gives his cheeks a light slap to wake himself up, remembering he needs to gather firewood quickly before the sun sets over the forest. Walking through the woods, the young man scans the tree canopy, remembering he spotted some high-quality timber around this area. Standing before a tree called Speckled Wood, Lion reads the system description and sees it can yield great planks to sell back in town. He decides to buy a few basic woodworking tools from the shop to try crafting items and selling them for a sweet price in shillings. The young man chuckles contentedly, noting that he saved up his shillings through hard work specifically for moments like this. Striking a hero pose, Lion shows off his new basic carpentry kit and tightly grips the shiny axe he bought from the system. The system projects bright golden lines onto the tree trunk, instructing the young man to make a V-shaped cut to guide the fall. Lion takes a solid stance, takes a deep breath, and strikes the base of the tree with all his axe's power to start the notch. The sharp metal bites into the speckled wood repeatedly with precision, sending wood chips flying everywhere with every single impact. With a loud crack, the massive trunk finally gives way and crashes onto the forest floor, marking the MC's first successful tree fell. Lion celebrates big time, seeing that even though it was a small tree, it granted an immense stash of all-sized materials inside the system. While planning to saw off the remaining branches to gather everything, the young man suddenly catches sight of something unexpected deeper in the woods. Curious, he observes a mysterious structure amidst the foliage, wondering what an abandoned building would be doing out here. Lion is in utter shock as he gets closer, discovering a full wooden cabin hidden in such an isolated spot of the maze. He takes a close peek through the glass window, commenting to himself that it looks like a pretty average cabin at first glance. Stepping inside and noticing that the only piece of furniture is a bed, the MC wonders if he has permission to use the space during his stay. The system grants full usage rights to the new maze master, leaving Lion relieved that he will no longer have to sleep out in the open for a month. Suddenly, a brilliant idea strikes the MC's mind, and he pauses for a moment to better analyze the functions the master system can offer. He asks if it is possible to relocate the entire cabin to his main campsite, celebrating loudly when the screen confirms it can be done. When the system asks if he wants to begin transport immediately, the young man tells it to hold on and start sprinting back to base. Lion figures he only needs to craft household items once he has the actual house, deciding the first step now is clearing the campsite ground. With great agility, the young man clears out all the tall grass and clears away rocks from the plot to flatten the soil for the cabin. After prepping the plot, Lion marks where he wants to build, while the screen warns the process will take a moment and make plenty of noise. He watches a golden glow appear in the sky, wondering if the house will simply be summoned there through some kind of high-level magic spell. All of a sudden, a gigantic shadow starts blanketing the grass around Lion, leaving the young man totally bewildered by what is going on. Looking up and realizing the absolute madness the system is about to pull, the young man goes pale with fear and prays nothing goes wrong. With a deafening boom, the entire cabin plummets from the sky right onto the marked spot, and the system cheerfully announces setup is complete. Coughing up a storm in the middle of a massive dust cloud sweeping the camp, Lion tries to make sense of how that just happened. The young man says in disbelief that he never imagined house transport literally meant hurling a cabin through the air in the middle of the maze. Despite the massive scare and almost getting flattened, the young man beams with satisfaction at the final result of his new temporary home. Lion celebrates the fact that, after just 1 week isolated in here, he finally managed to secure a comfortable house of his own. He organizes his belongings inside, giving major props to the wooden counter and kitchen tools he neatly arranged in the corner. Looking at the stacked firewood by the window, the young man notices with satisfaction that he finished unpacking everything with plenty of daylight left. Hyped about the free time, he leans on the workbench and decides he can already start crafting some basic household necessities. Lion holds one of the speckled wood planks and starts inspecting it closely to plan his next moves in woodworking. He begins using the hand plane to smooth out the surface carefully, praying that his first craft attempt turns out right. The system ranks his first set of chopsticks and bowl as totally hideous, making the MC complain that the screen did not have to roast his work so hard. Unbothered by the harsh review, the young heir accepts that nobody is perfect on the first try and resolves to keep grinding to get better. Lion spends the next few hours locked in at the carpentry table near the window, carving and refining every wooden piece with sheer dedication. He lets out a sigh of relief upon seeing the new, flawless utensils on the desk and hearing the system announce he unlocked the carpentry talent. The young man praises the high quality of his new wooden cutlery and plates, thinking they will be more than enough for his daily use here. Knowing that the shop buys any item above 1 star that looks decent, the MC wonders if the system would also take a different kind of product. With extreme focus and precision, he uses the chisel to carve out the final details on the edges of a new wooden structure on his bench. Upon finishing, he creates a 1-star flower vase that the system appraises at an excellent starting sale price of 1,000 shillings. Sporting a greedy expression and a mischievous smile, the young man prepares to list his new woodwork product in the shop. He lifts the wooden vase with both hands toward the floating screen, firmly telling the system he wants to put the item up for sale. The young man complains about the 80% payout rate and asks the system to look closer, insisting that the vase's finish turned out gorgeous and delicate. The system lowers the offer even further due to it being an item without special value, leaving the young man outraged by such an absurd and unfair price drop. He counters the point by explaining that the vase was crafted using wood from the maze itself, claiming that this raw material alone makes it super rare. The young man highlights that the major selling point of this special wood is its crazy durability, and most importantly, its complete waterproof nature. With smooth sales talk, Lion pretends to be on a phone call, insisting that a product this pretty and efficient will definitely sell out in a heartbeat. The system recalculates the price based on his new arguments and raises the offer to 1,500 shillings, making the young man cheer for the win. Thrilled that he managed to double the item's initial value with his smooth talk, Lion happily accepts the new offer of 1,500 shillings. The system collects the wooden vase and pays out the agreed amount, leaving the young man wondering if he can keep selling the exact same item. The system confirms he can, but warns that the sale value will drop significantly if the supply of that item ends up exceeding its demand. Knowing this, Lion concludes it is better to mix up production to rack up plenty of experience and hit skilled artisan level as fast as possible. 3 weeks pass inside the peaceful maze cabin, showing that the young man's daily grind of training and crafting remains super productive. Nearby, a maze white trout leaps out of the sparkling water, described by the system as an extremely valuable 2-star fish. Lion unlocks a rare fishing achievement that grants him 3,000 shillings, celebrating his fishing proficiency leveling up to rank 3. Holding the beautiful fish in his hands, the heir notices that his fishing rod's durability is down to almost 0, but cheers that preparations are set. Lion knows that to upgrade his rank from apprentice to skilled artisan, the system mandates a required prerequisite. This condition states that, excluding the main talent he wants to raise, he must have at least 5 other skills at apprentice rank 3. By leveling up fishing, he celebrates hitting the target, though he tiredly admits that leveling up so many life skills is a massive grind. The young man spots a glowing drop fall from the fish, discovering it is a maze trout eye, a rare gem that conducts magical energy exceptionally well. Lion's eyes widen in shock as he shouts in surprise, seeing that tiny 2-star gem is worth a whopping 10,000 shillings at the shop. With greedy eyes sparkling at the thought of such easy cash, he admits he feels an overwhelming urge to sell the item right then and there. But the young man notices that the gem's recipe requires the skilled artisan rank, sensing that this ingredient will be insanely useful down the road. He decides to resist the temptation and stash the gem in his inventory, along with the fish essences to use in his special potions. With a confident smirk, the young master figures he will easily unlock the recipe anyway once he ranks up his alchemy skill. Opening his boiling alchemy cauldron, the young man celebrates receiving a valuable, freshly crafted maze trout essence from the system. Suddenly, a beam of golden light erupts from the cauldron, and the system notifies him that his potion crafting specialization has broken its limit. The system congratulates him on the evolution, revealing that his skill has reached skilled artisan rank 1, unlocking a bunch of new recipes. Lion is fascinated seeing so many recipes floating around him all at once, feeling that this rank up was completely different from all the previous ones. He notices a plush doll designed to reflect curses, realizing with surprise that he now gained recipes that go way beyond basic potions. With a glowing face and flushed cheeks, the young heir admits to himself that the feeling of leveling up is purely amazing and unmatched. As the data transfer finishes, Lion understands that the skilled rank has finally granted fundamental mastery over general alchemy. Determined to test out his new options, the young man opens the system search menu and types in the name of the fish essence to check its recipe. Reading that the essence must be swallowed whole like a pill despite its strong fishy odor, he wonders if there is a specific recipe that uses it. The system reveals a locked recipe requiring 5 essences and 2 fish eyes, warning about a high risk of failure during craft. He thanks his lucky stars he did not sell the trout eye, but quickly panics upon realizing the mystery recipe demands 5 rare fish essences. Looking at his stash, Lion realizes with concern that the single fish eye he managed to get so far is the exact one saved in his inventory. The young man swallows hard, realizing that due to the scarcity of rare ingredients, he will only get one single shot to pull off the recipe. Feeling the rush of adrenaline from the lack of backup materials, the young man carefully drops the expert tier ingredients into the cauldron. During the process with a wide smile from ear to ear, Lion comments to himself that alchemy is hands down the most fun activity ever. He reflects that fishing and building stuff are awesome, but admits nothing beats the suspense and hype of brewing alchemical items. Laughing out loud like a mad scientist, the young man shouts that only amateurs fear failure and that a low success rate only makes it more thrilling. With strong resolve, the young master slams the heavy lid onto the cauldron to let the magical concoction boil under intense pressure. Suddenly, the lid starts rattling violently and terrifyingly, putting Lion in a panic as he realizes something in the chemical reaction went wrong. He rushes to hold down the lid with all his force, and thanks to the fire spirit's blessing, his hands suffer no burns from the metal's scorching heat. Lion throws his entire body weight to contain the pressure, knowing that if the lid blows now, his only chance to craft that precious item is gone. When the cauldron finally settles and stops shaking, the young man breathes a sigh of victorious smile for holding off the explosion. The 2-star alchemist's fish pill appears right before him, granting a permanent mana boost and boasting a shop value of 15,000 shillings. The young man evaluates the pill, admitting he expected a higher rank given the crazy ordeal he went through, but stays grateful he did not lose the materials. Rereading the specs, he notes with surprise that the item's utility is geared toward fishing, indicating that a certain type of fish loves eating it. Lion fixes his gaze on the pill, and as he processes that wild piece of info, he starts piecing together the true, mind-blowing purpose of that special item. He realizes the pill serves as the ultimate bait, and imagines a colossal creature in the deep waters of the lake being drawn in by its smell. The MC realizes that the lack of special bait was the exact reason he never hooked anything above 3 stars, despite fishing like crazy every day. With a clever smirk, Lion calculates that he could barter and sell a fish of that rarity for at least 20,000 shillings with the shop system. He plans to catch the rare fish to craft an even better pill, picturing a chain reaction of fishing until he pulls up a legendary creature. With his strategy laid out, Lion decides to stash his current fish and the special pill in his inventory, knowing he does not need instant cash right now. He walks over to the edge of the crystal clear lake, thinking that since he will be leaving the maze soon, he should make the most of his last fishing session there. Lion hooks the fish pill onto the line, reflecting that the absolute most important thing right now, beyond cash or levels, is just enjoying his downtime. The young man casts the line into the water with precision, letting out a relaxed sigh as he sits down comfortably to soak in the peace and quiet. Outside the maze, inside the grand office of the Astri Manor, the housekeeper alerts Patriarch Patrick that only 2 days remain until Lion's deadline ends. Patrick Astri rests his chin on his gloved hands, solemnly confirming he is aware of the timeline while wearing a look of deep worry on his face. He admits with a heavy sigh that he can barely contain his anxiousness to see his grandson, wondering if the clan's current situation is doing any better. Patrick remembers with rage when the prince proposed to his late daughter, recalling how badly he wanted to personally go and take out the pushy noble. The housekeeper praises the patriarch's mature attitude in holding back his temper, suggesting he starts setting up arrangements to welcome Lion back. The old mage rests his face thoughtfully on his black gloves, asking curiously what kind of welcome she would recommend for the young master's return. She suggests booking an entire luxury hotel to make up for the young man's struggles during the test, pointing out that the Astor Hotel was just renovated. Patrick thoughtfully agrees with the idea, believing that giving his grandson some downtime in a high-end spot is a solid suggestion. Sylvia says she will prep everything right away, but the patriarch stops her for a second, calling her sister and changing the subject. Patrick shows deep concern over the fact that the library maze collapsed, touching on a very sensitive topic for her. He tries to reassure the housekeeper with a serious gaze, guaranteeing she does not need to stress about the fallout from that collapse. Sylvia smiles warmly, replying that even though her path to freedom vanished along with the maze, she has been having way too much fun to care. Feeling a bit awkward, Patrick mutters that was not quite what he meant, but decides not to jump the gun with his words. The grandfather admits that despite his deep affection, the young heir truly has an insane natural knack for stirring up massive trouble. Patrick confesses he has a strong gut feeling that his grandson must have caused an absolute storm inside the maze over this past month. He reflects seriously, imagining that Lion might even return from that dungeon carrying a mysterious, legendary item with him. Meanwhile, Lion enjoys the gorgeous sunset by the lake, peacefully fishing with just his trusty old rod and the bait he prepped. The young man smirks, thinking that if pro anglers saw him right now, they would definitely think he was nothing more than a total amateur. He recalls the old saying that the true beauty of fishing lies in pushing through and losing a bunch of bait until you finally land that big one. However, looking at the completely still bobber, the young man complains a bit about not getting a single bite after hours of waiting. He finds the total silence of the water strange, wondering how not a single fish is surfacing, comparing the spot to a dead pond. He theorizes that maybe there is an apex predator spooking all the other fish down in the depths when suddenly he catches a faint ripple in the water. With insane violence, the bobber gets yanked under, creating massive splashes, making Lion jump as he realizes a monster took the bait. Feeling unreal pressure on the line, the young man smiles with grit, absolutely sure he hooked something on a whole different level. From the monstrous pull shaking the line, he instantly calculates that this creature has got to be a rare fish of at least 3 stars. Straining with crazy strength that bends his gear to its absolute limit, Lion lets out a grunt of effort, doing everything to reel in the line. The young man is stunned as a gigantic tail breaks the water with sheer force, wondering just how huge the full body of that hidden beast must be. He panics, realizing the line could snap if he keeps getting dragged around like this, reminding himself that he only has one shot to pull this off, channeling all his strength into his shaking hands. The young heir decides to deploy one final play to tire out the beast in the deep. Seizing the giant fish's moment of weakness, Lion roars and pulls the rod back with every bit of energy he has left to haul it out of the lake. He lands flat on his back on the grass as the system pops an alert, warning that his fishing rod's durability was completely wiped out right at that moment. With wide eyes, he sees the screen confirm his rod's destruction, but his gaze stays locked on the massive fish flying straight toward him through the air. The system congratulates him on landing a 3-star 5-color sturgeon, noting that its eyes shine like valuable topaz gems. Seeing the massive fish in his arms with crazy difficulty, the young master shouts in pure shock, unable to believe the insane size of the animal. In a joking tone, the young man deeply laments not having a camera to capture this historic moment of his greatest catch ever. He lightly slaps his own cheeks to regain focus, reminding himself that this is definitely not the time to be fooling around. Moving fast, the young man hauls the huge sturgeon in his arms and sprints toward the cabin, aiming to clean it as fast as humanly possible. He slices the ingredients lightning fast with a razor-sharp knife, celebrating after successfully extracting a 3-star sturgeon essence. Holding up a super shiny golden gem in his right hand, the young man cheers loudly after scoring his very first level 3 fish eye. Losing no time, the alchemist drops the glowing gem straight into the boiling cauldron and slams the heavy lid shut to start his magical synthesis. The vessel begins shaking with insane violence, and Lion realizes with a shock that the reaction is way more intense due to the gem's high tear. Thanks to the elemental protection on his hands, he manages to hold down the boiling lid under pressure without getting scorched by the venting steam. With an intense look, the young heir tells himself he worked way too hard catching that sturgeon and that he will absolutely not accept failure. The hours tick by slowly, and dusk gives way to a gorgeous starry night over the quiet forest of the library maze. The sun shines again the next morning through the cabin window, and Lion groans with a whisper of pain from the built-up fatigue in his sore arms. Completely drained and leaning over the metal cauldron, the young man mutters weakly that he can barely believe he pulled an all-nighter right there. He notices the magical turbulence has completely settled, getting ready to lift the vessel's lid with massive anticipation and curiosity. With cheeks flushed from the heat, Lion slowly lifts the lid, and a brilliant, intense light reflects straight onto his face as he eagerly awaits the result. The 5-color pill manifests as a 4-star legendary item that grants insane mana bonuses and boosts his alchemy skill level straight to rank 2. Holding the massive, colorful pearl in both hands, the young man cheers big time over the absolute success of his toughest craft to date. He locks his eyes on the description promising a permanent, massive surge of high-purity mana leaving him completely mind-blown. Without hesitating for a single second, the young man chomps down the glowing treat and happily commenting that he would be insane not to eat it. A wild torrent of blue energy begins erupting from the young man's body, who feels an overwhelming power surge through all his veins and channels. He focuses with everything he has, channeling and stabilizing that chaotic energy straight into his primary mana circle. Keeping his eyes closed and his breathing calm, Lion controls the flow like a master, while a massive golden magic circle spins beneath his feet. The system pops an alert announcing the energy circle has been filled, congratulating the young man on fully mastering his very first circle. He instantly learns 3 basic spells, but the system warns that the excess unrefined energy will automatically vent from his body. Lion cheers with glowing eyes, finding it unreal that he managed to fully master his first mana circle. The system notifies him that repairs are complete and that he can now freely exit the maze, which will hold its current state under Lion's mastery. Smirking widely, the young man starts rapidly packing his flowers and vegetables into his bag, cheering that he can finally head back to the manor. Lion slings his gear onto his back and looks nostalgically at the wooden cabin that served as his home throughout this entire month. He feels immensely relieved knowing the cabin will stay right there intact for whenever he returns, given the insane amount of work it took to build. Skipping with joy along the path, the heir celebrates successfully completing his challenge of surviving a month inside the maze. However, the system screen cuts him off with an alert regarding an unregistered item found during the repair, sparking his intense curiosity. Glowing with a soft green light, the object floats right into Lion's hands, leaving him confused as he realizes the mystery item is not a treasure. The young master unrolls the ancient document with extreme care to closely inspect the mysterious writing on the yellowed parchment. Lion furrows his brow in complete shock as he realizes the mysterious object kept in the maze is actually an old contract. He narrows his eyes and locks his attention onto reading the clauses, feeling that the document's terms seem insanely harsh and unusual. The text exposes absurd restrictions, stating the witch cannot use advanced magic and must artificially age herself to match whoever she serves. Lion realizes this forces the immortal witch to alter her own physical appearance just to fit the role of a simple human servant. He discovers she must loyally serve House Astery and that a terrifying punishment exists should she break any of those strict rules. The young man gets outraged, commenting that this is a clear labor violation, thinking it is an absolute miracle his clan has not been sued in court yet. Noticing Sylvia's signature at the bottom, Lion gets confused, wondering what reason she could possibly have to sign such an unfair deal. Suddenly, one specific line of text catches his eye, making the young man's eyes go wide in shock as he realizes the hidden truth behind it all. Lion realizes that Sylvia accepted all those humiliating conditions solely to gain the right to live like a normal human being in the fiefdom.